He looks ordinary.
But one punch changes everything! Even gods can't keep up!
What if Issei's brother had Saitama's powers?
Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei's younger brother got Saitama powers movie. Before we start, please go support isonku-sen for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. In the battle against Trihexa, everything seemed lost. The plan was for the faction leaders to prepare a special attack to seal the Trihexa, but due to an attack from it, they were rendered unconscious. So Issei, with no other options, sacrifices himself to seal it, dying in the process. But he would leave without knowing that he would have a younger brother and that he would become the strongest human in existence. Prologue. The entire city of Lilith was destroyed and on fire. At the center of all this destruction were two dragons fighting. One of them was a blood-red dragon, and he is known as the dragon god of dreams, and his name is Great Red. And the other was a slightly larger dragon. This one was as black and dark as night. And he is known as the dragon god of the apocalypse, and his name was Trihexa. They were both biting, clawing and struggling with each other with all their might. But a few kilometers away, in the rubble of what was the capital of the underworld, were the leaders of the biblical factions, Yakase, Nordic, Olympic along with their representatives, were surrounded by thousands of corpses of soldiers of the same factions. But they weren't alone. There were also the retinues of the sisters of the Mao Lucifer and Leviathan, as well as those of Vali Lucifer's team and the dragon goddess of infinity, who was very injured and unconscious, and finally there was the retinue of Seraerd Baal. Everyone was on the verge of inconsistency, except for the leaders of the different factions and the two celestial dragons who were barely standing. Surzich. Have all the demons been evacuated yet? He asked his best friend and colleague. Ajuka. That bastard arrived suddenly, so we could only evacuate those who weren't in the area where he was, clenching his fists in frustration. Ross. Surzich-sama is ready, said the silver-haired Valkyrie who had a sphere in her hands, but this has a disadvantage, she said very seriously. Seraphol. And what disadvantage is it? Worried. Ross. They have to give him a lot of energy and launch an attack powerful enough to stun him. It can be physical or magical. But if it's physical, it'll be an inevitable death seeing the fight between the two dragon gods. Ajuka. Our separate attacks didn't do anything to him at first when we were at 100%. But now. Surzich. All we have left to do is launch a magical attack together. Give it to me. The Valkyrie handed the sphere to him and he looked at it more closely. Ajuka. Come everyone. He shouted with authority and everyone gathered. Some were helped and others got up as best they could and went to where everyone else had gathered. We need everyone to give it what's left of their energy to make the seal work properly, looking at everyone seriously. Without saying anything, everyone nodded and placed their hands around the sphere. Everyone began to give their energy to the sphere, which began to shine as it received more energy. Most of them ended up fainting from not being able to bear the lack of energy, and others just fell to their knees. Those who remained just resisted and continued giving him energy. When the sphere received the energy it needed, it emitted an intense glow, and after that it looked like a sphere of energy. Ajuka. Well. Now all that's left is the attack, he said, very tired. So all the faction leaders stood behind the floating sphere, they all started to charge their best attacks and were about to launch it. But they didn't count on Trihexa and the Great Red One seeing what they wanted to do. So the Dream Dragon quickly separated from the Apocalypse Dragon to prevent him from being sealed away as well. But Trihexa took advantage of the fact that they were a few seconds late and launched a magical attack from his mouth that went in their direction. Seeing the dragons attack, they stopped charging their attacks and created a barrier that covered everyone. The attack, upon colliding with the barrier, caused a very large explosion. But that the barrier barely held, and when it broke the leaders were unconscious on the ground. The Agred seeing this rushed to Trihexa and they resumed their fight. The others, seeing this, were simply shocked since that attack was their last hope and it seemed that the Dream Dragon would not hold out much longer. Now they didn't know what to do. They just saw the energy sphere lose some of its shine and fall to the ground. Now everyone thought they were lost and saw that Trihexa was gaining ground. Issei. Ross standing up and getting everyone's attention, especially the aforementioned one. You said a while ago that we could seal it with a physical attack, right? Ross. Yes. But it will be an inevitable death, she said, somewhat confused. Issei. Rebuilt his armor except for his helmet, went to where the sphere was and lifted it. Boost. 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 Transfer. Draig's voice resonated and the sphere recovered the shine it had lost, and the brown-haired boy looked up to see the fight between the two dragons. The others were very confused by how Issei was acting. Ddraig. Partner, what are you planning to do? He said, somewhat worried. Issei. There is no one else who can do it. I have to take advantage of the fact that he is distracted. I can't think of anything else, he thought seriously. Rias. I know what are you doing? She asked very worried while having a very bad feeling. The brunette turned to look at them seriously. But then he smiled. Now everyone was very confused. How can you smile at a time like this? Was the question on everyone's mind. But his thoughts were interrupted by the following words. Issei. I know you might not forgive me for this. But this is the only way I can think of to seal it, he said calmly. Now they had an idea of what Issei wanted to do. And they quickly saw him, shocked. Asia. Issei-san, she said very worried and with tears threatening to come out. Ross. You're not planning just like Asia. Bekeno. Ice-kun whispered, starting to cry. Rias. Issei. Tell me what you're not planning, she said with a voice that was beginning to break. Issei. Tell my parents to forgive me for not being what they wanted me to be, with a small tear running down his cheek and also with a broken voice. I hope they are happy, shedding more tears, but still with his smile. Nobody said anything because of the surprise. Ddraig. Partner. Are you sure? Worried. Issei. That's right. If with this I can ensure that but you and the others are happy, I will do it, drying his tears. Ddraig. Of all the carriers I've had, you're the only one willing to give his life for others, and you're definitely the best. He said with a bit of pride in his voice. Issei. Thanks friend, expanding his smile a little. The office opened her eyes slightly and all she could see was the brunette's back. After that, she became unconscious once again. Issei. Ddraig. Can I use the wings? Ddraig. I'm sorry, but no. They're devastated. Issei. Ah. Well, it'll be the old-fashioned way, preparing to run. Boost 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 boost. Issei. Ah. Feeling a very intense pain throughout his body, but continued in his position and turned to see his friends and his girls. Goodbye friends. Goodbye girls, goodbye Rias, he said with a big smile that made everyone and especially his harem's hearts break. And without anything else to say, Issei ran at great speed towards where the dragon gods were fighting. Rias. Issei. She screamed desperately. While the chestnut was running, he was talking to Ddraig. Issei. Ddraig, I need you to give me more boosts while jumping a giant rubble. Ddraig. But what are you saying? If I give you more than your body can handle, you won't reach it. Issei. And how many more can my body take? Increasing speed. Ddraig. Your body can only handle 5x magnification now. Are you sure? Issei. I'm going to die anyway. So please do it, dodging the debris of the city and seeing that he was closer. Boost 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 boost. Ddraig's voice resonated, increasing the brunette's power. He felt a twinge in his muscles and was going to explore. He increased his speed and strength to the point where he no longer needed to dodge debris, as he simply ran through it and continued running. When he was close enough, he screamed. Issei. Get away, Great Red. He shouted with all his might so that both dragons could hear him. The red dragon took advantage of the fact that the Trihexa was distracted and pushed him towards the chestnut tree and flew away. Issei jumped high, preparing to hit him with the sphere, which glowed a little brighter. Issei. Get back where you came from. He shouted, hitting him in the torso with the sphere, which broke upon contact with the dragon and himself and caused a gigantic explanation. But after a few seconds it began to implode. End of prologue. Chapter 1. 17 years later. In a stadium, more specifically in an octagon, stood a fallen angel being pierced by a fist. As he fell dead, another fallen angel could be seen with his arm covered in blood. The entire audience watching this gave a cry of excitement. And.ca. Is that all you got? Bring up a real opponent. Raising his fists, who's next? Pointing at a random person, will it be you? The one who was pointed at got very nervous, who was a skinny demon. Yes. Next will be you. Hey, I thought I was next, said a voice behind the fallen angel, who turned around to see a brown-haired boy who appeared to be 15 or 16 years old, who had an emotionless look and was wearing normal street clothes. Those who saw him laughed out loud at how scrawny he looked. The presenter, who was a man with red skin, entered the octagon and spoke into the microphone. Press. Ladies and gentlemen. This will be the last fight of the night. He shouted euphorically, receiving an equally euphoric shout from the spectators. Good. Don't forget to place your bets. To my left is our undefeated champion for 4 years in a row. Bullied. The public shouted euphorically, and to my right is a newcomer, a boy who came out of nowhere. Whoever's in the stadium was silent for a few minutes. Suddenly, everyone started laughing out loud and sent words of mockery to the already identified as Erzin. Even his opponent, identified as Borat, now let the fight begin. After shouting those words, he quickly left the octagon. Borat. Ha 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 ha, don't tell me you saw my last fight and still decided to come, he said mockingly to an Erzin who stared at him with an expressionless face. He. Seriously? You have balls to even come in front of me? Erzin. Said nothing. Borat. Tell me. Are you a demon? Or a fallen angel? Or maybe a Norseman? He said arrogantly. Erzin. Human, he said disinterestedly. Borat. Hey. Human. Don't make fun of me. He said annoyed, but the brown-haired boy didn't say anything. He ha 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 ha. I can't believe it. A human here. You're crazy, kid. But as compensation for coming as a human, I'll give you a quick death. You know. I also want to end this quickly, he said with his eyes closed, and also take the prize. Although I let you win, you'd only make a fool of yourself because to win you have to kill me. He opened his eyes just to see the boy taking a taper out of his ear with his pinky finger while he stared disinterestedly at the stadium ceiling. Hey. Are you even listening to me? He shouted angrily when he saw that they were ignoring him. Erzin. Huh. He stopped what he was doing to see his furious opponent. Sorry, I stopped paying attention since I told you I was human, he said with disinterest. Grrr, damn it. Lunged at the boy, punching him in the face. But he didn't budge even a millimeter. Grrr, stop making fun of me. Even more furious and with veins standing out on his face, he launched a rain of punches, raising a cloud of dust at the brunette in the process. Buret emerged from the cloud of dust with an arrogant smile. Buret. That'll teach him. But his smile changed to an expression of surprise as the cloud of dust cleared and Erzin was seen with his upper clothing torn to shreds, revealing his very defined torso. Buret. With more anger and some nerves, he created a spear of light and threw it at Erzin, who did nothing. The spear, upon contact with the chestnut's body, was destroyed in particular by light. At this point the entire stadium went completely silent and no one made a move at what was happening. Borat. What the hell, why you are, he said, stuttering and sweating profusely. Erzin. I already told you I'm human, that's all. Buret. Li. No human has such monstrous resistance. Humans are just scum who only serve as a way for demons to survive, the weakest race of all who have done nothing but be garbage. Don't tell me you're a miserable human because no one will believe you. Erzin. Buret. Stop lying once and for all. Stop saying you're human and tell me what you really are, damn it. Erzin. Shut up, you're always talking. If you're going to complain, don't do it with a damn speech. He shouted, quite angry. I didn't come here to talk. I just want the prize, so shut up. I already told you I'm human. Buret. Grrr, I don't believe you, bastard. He launched himself again, but this time he accumulated all his magical power in his fist. When the fist was about to collide with his face, it disappeared, leaving Buret bewildered. The fallen angel turned around only to see a fist touching. It was the last thing he saw before. After a few more minutes of silence throughout the stadium, they gave a more euphoric shout than the previous ones. The presenter entered the octagon, standing next to a disinterested Erzin. Presenter. Ladies and gentlemen. This was a surprise. Our undefeated champion was easily massacred by the fighter. Erzin. He shouted euphorically and raised the brunette's arm. No one stopped screaming with euphoria and excitement of the moment. Narrated by Erzin. A blow. It always ends like this. In a blow. The first few weeks were fun. But as the months went by, well, it became really boring. I miss feeling the adrenaline rush of being in danger again. When a person thinks of superhuman strength, they think of being able to lift a car at most. Even that's exaggerated for a normal person. But when I think of superhuman strength, I remember the times when I made my enemies explode with a single blow. Those people would see it as something cool or think that if they had it, they would become superheroes like in the comics. But actually having superhuman strength is pretty boring. Chapter 2. Narrated by Erzin. And to think that a simple goal would make me what I am today. All to save a girl from some guys. It took me 4 years to get the strength I have now, and I don't know if this will have repercussions in the future. Nobody knows about this more than myself. I don't have to worry about my relatives finding out, since I don't have any. The only thing I know that I ever had parents is the last name. My name is Erzin Haidu. I don't know if they died or abandoned me, I don't really care. I've been in the underworld for 2 months now, and I don't know how the hell I got here. I thought that the demons, being superior in strength to humans, would give me a fight. But it turned out to be another farce. Nothing can hurt me now, I think. When I found out about the clandestine fights and that the prize was coins from families, I don't know what, that they go a long way, I decided to take advantage of the strength I have and see if someone could hurt me. But the only thing it was good for in the end was to make money, although I'm not complaining. I can go from hotel to stay for 2 or 3 days in each one. That's better than sleeping on the floor. End of Erzin's narration. Present. The chestnut tree is seen sitting in a square while eating ice cream and looking at the greenish sky with an expressionless face. People looked at him strangely because the clothes he was wearing weren't from there. But they identified him as a reincarnated demon and continued on their way. Of course the chestnut tree didn't notice this as it continued to look at the sky. And he didn't notice how a woman sat next to him. This woman had slanted golden eyes, hair as black as night and a stunning figure. This woman was wearing a tight white blouse and a skirt. But the parts that stood out the most about her were a pair of cat ears on her head and a pair of what appeared to be cattails. She sighed, and noticing the presence of the brown-haired girl, she looked at him curiously out of the corner of her eye. He had sensed a familiar scent coming from him, courtesy of his enhanced senses. That boy didn't notice this, he just remained motionless. But his tranquility was interrupted when he felt a little cold in his hand. As he watched, he noticed how his ice cream melted. Erzin. Oh no. Quickly with his tongue, he cleaned the muddy part on his hand and put all his ice cream in his mouth. With a little difficulty, he swallowed it all, while a few small tears appeared in his eyes and his face turned blue, and he grabbed his neck with one hand and his head with the other, while making a funny face. The woman on his side can't put a hand on her mouth and laugh a little at the scene. This did not go unnoticed by Erzin, who looked at her. Erzin? What are you laughing at? He asked, annoyed. The Nekomata didn't respond and just laughed a little louder. Erzin? TSK, stop laughing. He said, more annoyed while his eyes turned white with anger. Well, don't get angry, Naya, she said, stopping laughing and looking at the young man with a funny smile. The brown-haired boy calmed down and returned to his expressionless face. Can I ask your name, Naya? She asked with a smile and staring at the boy who had caught her attention because of the aroma he transmitted. Erzin. I'm Erzin, he said disinterestedly. Kuroka. Oh, so Erzin, Naya, she repeated the name. Well, mine is. She didn't finish because a magic circle appeared in her ear. After a few seconds, the circle disappeared and the Nekomata gave a tired sigh. Kuroka. Well, Erzin, Naya, I have to go. Getting up from the place. See you, she smiled, and through a magic circle, she disappeared. The people around saw this, somewhat surprised since it was not so common to use magic circles in the middle of the street. For his part, Erzin did nothing but leave since he had to collect his things that were in the hotel where he slept to stay in another hotel. At night, Erzin was lying on the hotel bed. Erzin. Why would a woman come and talk to me out of nowhere? He asked himself something curious. Well, it doesn't matter. Without further ado, he lay down and fell into a deep sleep. But Kuroka. She was coming out of a magic circle in a mansion room that once belonged to the family of her love interest. Suddenly, a blonde with a body that competed with the brunette came in with a cup of tea. Kuroka. Asia, Naya, have you had dinner yet? Asia. If we already had dinner, Kuroka-san, do you want some? There's some left over. She said with a smile. Kuroka. No, thank you. I was just curious. I'm very tired. She sighed. Asia. Ever since you separated from Vali-sen's group, you've been very stressed with the work Suzuki-sama gave you. You should take a few days off, she said, taking a sip from her cup. Kuroka. It's better than doing nothing and being bored all day. By the way, how's Rias? The blonde sighed. Asia. You should know how she is. She hasn't been the same since that day, she said, her head bowed, and I'm running out of ideas. The others are helping out too, but their business doesn't leave them much time, and I'm a little busier with the orphanage. The black-haired man lowered his head a little. Kuroka. Well, we'll just have to wait. He's already over 15 years old and he still hasn't gotten over it. He should now have the position of leader of the Gremory clan. Asia. Rias One-sama was the most affected of all. She doesn't want to have anything to do with anyone anymore. Kuroka. Anyway, one day he'll have to get over it, she said as she entered an elevator. I'm going to sleep. See you tomorrow, Asia. Naya was what she said before the elevator door closed. Upon arriving and entering her room, she sat on the edge of her bed and on a nightstand she saw a photo of a certain perverted but kind-hearted brunette with his entire harem and her included. The brunette took the photo and smiled warmly. But as she focused on the face of her former love interest, she couldn't help but remember the boy she had met that afternoon. She opened her eyes when she saw that these two chestnuts had a resemblance. Kuroka. No. It must be a coincidence or my imagination. Besides, he would have to be a human and he was in the underworld, but why was their scent similar? The black-haired Nekomata questioned, leaving the photo where it was and went to take a bath. When he finished, he went to bed. Kuroka. Tomorrow I will investigate that boy, was what she thought before closing her eyes and falling deeply asleep. Chapter 3. It was already morning and a certain Nekomata is slowly opening her eyes. Kuroka. Damn son, she said, annoyed, covering her eyes. After that, he looked at the time and it was 6:13 a.m. He got up and took a bath. When he got out, he got dressed and left his room. When he arrived at the room he saw Keno, Zenobia, Irina, Asia, Kaneko, and Rossweisse. Kuroka. Good morning. All. Good morning, Kuroka-san. One-sama, they returned the greeting. Asia. "Sit down Kuroka-san, or breakfast will get cold," said the blonde with a sweet smile. Kuroka. "Thank you," she said sitting down, then serving herself and starting to eat. Asia. "By the way, I didn't get to ask yesterday. How was work?" Kuroka. Do you really want to know?" she asked doubtfully, seeing how the blonde nodded. The other women in the place didn't pay attention to what they were talking about, they were only thinking about other things. Kuroka. "Well, there's nothing to write home about. After all, I work as a messenger for the Mao Lucifer," she said with disinterest. Asia. "And you didn't have any time off?" Kuroka. "Yes I did, but they cut it short since the paperwork that came to the Mao was massive and couldn't wait." Asia. "Wow, I can't imagine how Suzuki-sama must have suffered," she said with a somewhat amused smile. Kuroka. "Although calling Asia's attention during my break I met someone a bit interesting Naya." Asia. "With someone interesting? And who was it?" she asked curiously. Kuroka. "He was a boy. He didn't look older than 17, Naya." Zenovia. "And what's so interesting about that?" she asked since it was the only thing she could hear. Kuroka. "Well, I say it's interesting because he seemed to be a human." This left all the women at the table perplexed. Bakeno. "A human in the underworld? This is a joke, right? There can't be a simple human in the underworld," she said, coming out of surprise. Kuroka. "I said it seemed like it. I didn't confirm it." Irina. "If it is, then it is a problem." Ross. "Have you analyzed their aura?" Kuroka. "I couldn't, I was tired. I only came to watch his ice cream melt and talk to him a little." Bakeno. "At least he told you his name?" Kuroka. "Ah, that's right. If I remember correctly, her name was Zenovia. "You don't remember, right?" she asked, already somewhat annoyed. Kuroka. "Her name is a bit strange." I'm grabbing her head. "Damn, I remember." Ross. "And what is it?" somewhat impatiently. Kuroka. "Brunson." "No, that wasn't it," she said, making everyone fall to the floor in I'm style. Asia. "It won't be Erzin." The blonde spoke with her head bowed. Kuroka. "Yes. Erzin Naya. That's his name." "Wait a minute, how do you know his name?" she asked surprised. The others fixed their gaze on the blonde who still had her gaze lowered and was trembling a little. Irina. "Is something wrong Asia-chan?" she asked worriedly seeing how she was shaking. Asia. "Why yes, just that a few months ago at the orphanage where I work, the disappearance of a boy who had been there since he was very young was reported. His age was 15 years old and his name was Erzin. There were also reports that before his disappearance, he was found very injured and exercising despite his condition, when out of nowhere he disappeared and was never seen again," she said, causing the others to be surprised again. Ross. "Wait a minute, but if you've been working at the orphanage for a month, how do you know that?" Asia. "The owner informed me before I started working. It was said that she escaped, but since she was so young and had no money, she couldn't have gotten very far." Kuroka. "No. It must be a horrible coincidence," she thought. Zenovia. "If it's the same person Kuroka spoke to, then the Maya must be informed that a human is walking in demonic territory illegally," she said seriously. Kuroka. "Then, I'll go and inform him when I get to work today." Kaneko. "Are you sure they'll let you see him? I know you have time off, but with all the work he has, I highly doubt he'll take one too." That made the Nekomata think. She was right, since the paperwork from the previous day had been very excessive. Irina. "How about you tell Serafal-san?" she said, drawing their gaze to her, which made her a little nervous. Just saying. Since she doesn't have that much work and since Ona-san told us she makes time to call her, you could borrow it this time." Kuroka. "Ooh. Maybe it's not a bad idea. But how do we do it? I mean, I have to work and I don't think they'll let me take the day off. This matter won't just take a few minutes." Once again, everyone was thoughtful. Asia. "I could go drawing attention to her. After all, I'm the one who has the most information about the boy. Even though I haven't met him." Irina. "Are you sure? You don't have to go babysit at the orphanage." Asia. "That's right. But according to the owner, I did a really good job and she said I could take a day off once this month. Although I have to report it." Kuroka. "Okay. I can take you since you're still not very good with magic circles. But you'll have to wait until I'm done working to come back." Asia. "I can ask Serafal-sama to bring me back. That way I'll save you the trouble," she said, smiling. Kuroka. "Damn, I wanted to do it as an excuse to leave early, after all she is known for having the most effective healing power in the underworld well since. And regarding the matter I will not mention that the boy has a scent similar to that of Ice-kun." She thought this last with melancholy and lowered her head. 5 hours later with Erzin. The chestnut tree was walking through the city, going unnoticed by the other passers-by. "Erzin. What should I do?" There are no fights scheduled, and I have enough money to live for a whole year, he thought, disinterestedly watching the people passing by him. In that, he dodges a silver-haired man with whom he was about to crash. While the silver-haired man fell to his knees due to surprise. The chestnut tree was about to continue on its aimless path, but… "Hey brat, you should watch where you're walking," he said, getting up from the ground and wiping his pants. "Erzin? Ooh." Turning to look at him. "Fortunately for you, I'm in a bit of a hurry. So you're saved this time," was what he said before turning and continuing walking. The teenager just watched him leave. "Erzin? What a strange guy," he said to himself before going off on his own, arriving at a square where there was a statue of a guy with armor that looked somewhat striking to the brown-haired boy. He saw at the feet of the statue a plaque that had some words on it. "In memory of the Sekiryuutei who saved the world. Hi to Issei." "Erzin? Who saved the world? Wow, he must have been very strong. Maybe he put up a fight with me," he thought, and then started to argue. Wait, did he say hi to? On the silver-haired man's part, he continued walking until he heard a voice. "Bali, did you feel it?" he asked in his mind. "Bali? What are you talking about, Albion?" "Albion? Wow, ever since you became an archaeologist you've become absent-minded about other things. And I was able to confirm that because you almost ran into that guy. Even he realized it before." "Bali? Yeah, say what you want," a little annoyed. "Albion? Well, it's about that brat from before." "Bali? Eh? And what's wrong with him?" Confused. "Albion? He shouldn't be here." "Bali? Hey, get to the point." "Albion? Good. He shouldn't be here because he's human," he said seriously. The silver-haired man stopped dead in his tracks upon hearing that. "Bali? Did you say human?" Surprised. "Serafal? You said human." "Asia?" "Serafal Sama, calm down a bit please," she said nervously. "Serafal? Ah, sorry Asia-chan. I was just surprised by what you said." "Asia? Don't worry, your reaction is understandable," smiling. "Serafal? Yes, thank you for understanding. Well, I'll inform Surzich-chan of this so we can start searching for him and return him to the human world." "Asia?" Edo calling the attention of the brunette. "Serafal? Huh? Do you have anything else to say, Asia-chan?" Intrigued. "Asia? Well, there is one more piece of information about that boy that could help a lot in your search." "Serafal? If so, you can say it, right?" "Asia? Yes, well, her name is Erzin." "Serafal? A little worried. Hey, do you have something? I saw you were very distressed when you said that name." "Asia? Why yes, it's just that I still find it hard to believe that it's him who's here." A little calmer. "Serafal? Do you know him?" Surprised. "Asia? No, I don't know him, it's just that before I started working at the orphanage, there was a 15-year-old boy with that name. According to the owner, he's the child who stayed there the longest." "Serafal? So he's an orphan, I see. But don't you think it's a coincidence that they have the same name?" "Asia? It must be too much of a coincidence, since the boy disappeared from one day to the next and was never seen again. They even put up posters on the street and his parents died after he was born, so he couldn't have escaped to find them." "Serafal? Wow, poor boy. That both of his parents died and he didn't even have the chance to meet them must have been very hard for him," he thought. Wait, if his parents died, shouldn't they announce their last name too? After all, if cases like that happen, they normally do that. "Asia? I know, and I asked about that too. But they decided to keep it a secret except for the orphan himself, since they think he deserves to know that much at least." "Serafal? Well, now the important thing is to inform Surzich-chan about this." She said this a little seriously. "Asia? It seems that Maduro is comparing his attitude a lot from 17 years ago," she thought, seeing how the pigtailed Mau behaved. Chapter 4. 1 year and a half ago. The 15-year-old Erzin could be seen doing push-ups in a small room. This made a clear effort to do so. Erzin, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. Ash. Erzin. Arg, he complained of the pain as he dropped to the floor and writhed in this. "Oh again this prick. It hurts horrible," he thought, enduring the pain as much as he could. After a few hours, the same brown-haired man was running down the street. He was wearing green sportswear and a blue scarf hanging around his neck. And as he was about to turn a corner, his back made a cracking sound. This caused a sharp pain in his back, which made him put his hands on his lower back. Erzin. Oh damn, first a pain that feels like a bunch of huge needles are going through your whole body, and now a damn backache, he thought with annoyance as he walked carefully and breathed heavily. He walked until he reached an appliance store. But what stood out most was that there were several televisions in the window showing the news. Reporter. Very well, and in the latest news today in Tokyo, there was another sighting of Kain in different locations. Also, today marks 9 years since the first Kain appeared in Kyoto, taking hundreds of lives with it. Erzin. 9 years. It's not too late, nor too recent. He looked up at the sky and brought his hand to his scarf, then squeezed it. It's been a year since Chunji died, and since then, my physical abilities have increased enormously. It's like I can move like a real superhero. Ash. Erzin. Arg. He complained, grabbing his torso. Crack. Erzin. Ajerg. He complained, now grabbing his back. Shit, why just now? Maybe this time I overdid it with the training. Should I go back? He thought. But as if fate didn't want it, an explosion resonated throughout the place, making people freak out and run away. Ah, right, it had to be, he said angrily. From the smoke of the explosion emerged a monster with a humanoid body. It was entirely white, except for its hands, which were a reddish hue up to its forearm. It also didn't seem to have eyes or a nose. The only thing it had was a somewhat small mouth. Monster. Pathetic humans. All they know how to do is run. Like rats, he said while watching people escape. Erzin. Why did he appear just now? Damn, my body hurts, he thought, being the only one in the place who didn't move. Well, I guess I'm the only one who can do something. Straightening up, making his back pop a little. I've felt worse pains during training, so this won't stop me. In the blink of an eye, the brown-haired man disappeared, the only thing that could be seen of him being the small craters left by his footsteps as he quickly headed towards the Kain. Erzin tried to hit him, taking advantage of the fact that he couldn't see him. But the monster realized and punched him in the face, causing him to crash into a truck, destroying it in the process. Monster. You're fast, but not fast enough. Still, this isn't normal, he said, approaching the chestnut tree that was stuck in the destroyed truck. Erzin pulled himself together and ran towards the monster with the intention of punching it. But he stopped him, and taking advantage of the fact that he had him grabbed, he began to hit him on the ground repeatedly, causing a lot of damage to his body. After a few seconds of whipping him, he lifted him by the arm, and it could be seen in more detail that he was all bloody and his clothes were quite torn. Monster. Pathetic grabbed him by the foot and kneed him in the back. Erzin. Aig. He gave a heart-rending scream that was heard throughout the area. The few people who were able to hide in a safe place watched in horror as the monster mistreated the poor boy. He threw Erzin towards the wall of a building, destroying it. The brown-haired boy remained on the floor unable to move while he watched the Kain slowly approach. Erzin. I have to get up, he thought while with effort he put the palms of his hands on the ground, ready to get up. Ash. Crack. Erzin. Ah. Oh no. Not this. Spitting out a large amount of blood. Monster. You surprised me. But I'll have to kill you now so you won't be a nuisance in the future, growing his claws. Erzin. This stinging pain doesn't stop and it's much stronger than the previous ones. And this damn back pain isn't helping. Monster. You know what? I thought about it and I'd better beat you to death. He ran towards the brown-haired boy and kicked him in the stomach, sending him flying through another wall and out onto the street again. He quickly stood in front of Erzin, grabbed his foot and threw him upwards. He jumped up to Erzin's level and slammed his hammer down on his back, sending him plummeting and creating a small crater upon impact. Erzin was on the verge of unconsciousness and could not move a finger. Erzin. Where is the police? They have the equipment to deal with Kains, he thought as he saw the monster land and approach without being able to do anything. Monster. Are you still alive? You're a hard-to-kill cockroach. Erzin. My body isn't moving, am I going to die? No, this can't stay like this, otherwise Chunji's sacrifice won't have been worth anything. He thought, trying to get up with all the strength he had left, but once again his back stopped him. Monster. How annoying, he said, approaching slowly. Erzin. Aja. My back, damn it. He said mentally, making an inhuman effort to get up. Flashback. The supernaturals think we'll never amount to more than what we are. They are born with power. Even if some of their leaders don't think so. Most of the members of their kingdoms think we're scum. My goal is to shut those wretches up, however. Erzin, if anything happens to me, you'll be the one to take care of it. You'll break the barrier that limits us and you'll prove that humans are just as dangerous, if not more so, than they are. That true effort is worth far more than weak, worthless talent and power. Then flashback. Erzin. True, I have a goal. Chunji gave it to me. He thought as he made more effort and his pain increased. Ash. Ash. Crack. Erzin. Shit. No, I'm not going to stop. Hi. Using all his strength, he slowly began to get up. Ash. Crack. Ignoring all that pain, he was already on his knees. Erzin. My back. Damn it. Aig. He gave a heart-rending scream. Crack. Making a last great effort, he was finally able to bend over. This made his eyes widen and he stood still for a few seconds. The monster stopped walking to see what the chestnut tree was doing. He slowly stood up and saw the Kain. Erzin. Already, I'm better. He said the last part with a smile, his voice hoarse. Monster. You're weird deciding not to waste any more time, he launched a very quick swipe. But I don't expect the chestnut to dodge it even if it was just by a hair. Without giving him time to wait, Erzin, with all his strength, connected a punch to the monster's stomach, which pushed him away and knocked the wind out of him. This also made Erzin's arm hurt quite a bit. But he didn't give much thought to that or to his injuries. Erzin. My back doesn't hurt anymore. And the pricking suddenly stopped, he thought, while looking at his hands that were shaking uncontrollably. Monster. You've been hiding your strength all this time. He said in a somewhat annoyed tone. Erzin. Now I'll be able to move better. Although I can't defeat him due to my current state. At least I'll buy time for the police to arrive, he thought, now making a combat stance. The Kain launched a punch with greater speed than he demonstrated. But the brown-haired boy dodged it with difficulty and landed his blow on his face, which left him stunned. Taking advantage of that, he unleashed a combo of punches and kicks, which caused considerable damage to the beast. Erzin finished his attacks with a kick to the Kain's chest, which pushed him away and made him spit out some blood. Monster. You're really strong. Wiping the blood from his mouth, he then smiled hideously. Let's continue. He shouted, lunging forward at high speed with a very strong blow. The chestnut tree barely managed to cover itself, but the impact caused it to fly off, destroying several walls. It continued like this for a few seconds until it was printed on a wall. He couldn't think or do anything as he suddenly received a shower of very fast and strong blows, which made him go through the wall and remain on the floor. This time he couldn't move. That last attack did leave him seriously injured. Monster. So that increase in your strength was temporary, he said, seeing the brown-haired boy motionless on the ground. Erzin. Now I think I can't save myself from this anymore, he thought, feeling himself gradually becoming unconscious. At that, the sounds of sirens would be heard getting closer and closer. Erzin. The FN, he whispered, finally falling unconscious. The brunette slowly opened his eyes. Blinded by the light, he was able to clear his vision after a few seconds, noticing a white ceiling. He tried to move, but… Erzin. Arg. He groaned, feeling a sharp pain all over his body. He also realized that his entire body was bandaged. He shifted his eyes to the side, looking at hospital accessories and tools, quickly realizing he was in one. Erzin. What happened? He thought with confusion, until immediately after thinking that all the memories of his fight against the Kain fell on him like a bucket of cold water. Oh, damn, what a day, huh? A few minutes passed, during which he replayed that memory over and over again. And although the stabbing pains were gone, the sensation of pain they gave him was still there. Like a phantom pain. It continued like this until the door opened, revealing a nurse with brown hair and eyes of the same color. Oh, you woke up, he said as he approached. You must have a lot of questions, right? Seeing how the brown-haired boy just nodded. You are a very rare and incredible case. The teenager looked at her confused, to which she took out her cell phone and showed him a video in which the monster was seen violently whipping Erzin on the ground over and over again. Despite receiving attacks of that magnitude, your injuries weren't that fatal. Although you could have died if you were careless, he said this last bit in a reproachful tone. You should have waited for the police to arrive. What you did was very irresponsible and brave, smiling a little. If it weren't for your intervention, many people would have died. That Kain was category 4, so if it weren't for you, there would be a disaster right now. Erzin just listened quietly to what the nurse was telling him. But he focused more on the Kain category. He had already faced those types of threats. And thanks to his enhanced abilities, he could overcome them. Erzin. If it was category 4, then I could have killed him. But it was my back and the punctures that wouldn't let me do it. And when they passed, my body was already very hurt and tired from the effort, he thought while looking at the ceiling. True, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Rebecca. I took care of you while you were sleeping, she said cheerfully, trying to stop the brunette from thinking about what had happened. Erzin. Ah, nice to meet you, by the way. How long did I sleep? Rebecca. Ooh. Well, approximately a week, she said, making him surprised. Erzin. 1 semig. Due to the shock, he couldn't finish the sentence as he felt a sharp pain all over his body again. Rebecca. Don't move too much. Your muscles are still very sensitive, she said, somewhat worried. Erzin. Why yes. I noticed, he spoke with some effort. Just like that. The door opens again, drawing the attention of both chestnuts. Seeing who it was, they found another woman. Rebecca. Dr. Chisato, patient Erzin has already woken up. Chisato. Yes, Rebecca, I noticed, she said as she approached and fixed her gaze on Erzin, who looked at her confused. You are a very peculiar boy. Hi to Erzin, giving him a smile. I am Dr. Chisato Hasegawa. I, along with Dr. Keed, were in charge of examining your body thoroughly. Erzin? Okay. Thanks, I guess somewhat uncomfortable with the green-eyed girl's smile. Chisato. And let me tell you that we have found some oddities in you, he said, drawing the attention of the brown-haired boy. Erzin, rarity. Chisato. That's right. Do you want me to explain them to you? Erzin. Yes, that would be the most appropriate thing now, he spoke somewhat worried. Chisato. Well, from the foot of the bed, he took out a board with a sheet in the middle and checked it. The first thing we saw was that there was a very serious alteration in your growth hormones. Erzin, alteration. Chisato. As the week went by while you were unconscious, your growth hormones, instead of speeding up as they normally do when you enter a sleep state, slowed down more and more. To the point where they no longer work, nor will they. In short, you won't be able to grow. You will remain with the appearance of a 15-year-old boy forever, he said seriously. The brown-haired boy understood. And he was quite worried. He would be seen as a child forever. Although he had a doubt. Erzin. You said I couldn't grow up. So, I can't age? He asked. Chisato. Oh, well, that's another one of the oddities we found. And it's like you said, you won't be able to age. I'd explain it to you, but with a sigh I'm so tired, so I'll move on to the next thing. Erzin. Okay, with an arched eyebrow. Chisato. This is more normal. But it's not something that should happen to someone so young. Looking at him with some pity. You're sterile. The teenager's eyes opened wide at the statement. Erzin. I'm sterile. So I can't have children. Chisato. I'm afraid you won't be able to. Erzin. Gosh. It must be because of the times the Kaiyans hit me down there, he thought, but another doubt came to him. Wait, how did they test me? Chisato. Well, sorry, Dr. Keed was in charge of doing the exam on you, and well, she had to. Erzin. Had to. Confused. Rebecca. She had to masturbate while you were asleep, she said embarrassed. Erzin. Couldn't utter a word as his mind went blank. But after thinking it over more objectively, he calmed down. Well, I don't worry. If it was for health, right? Rebecca. Why yes. For your health, she said with a nervous smile, the same one Chisato had. Erzin looked at them, puzzled by this attitude, but he did not dwell on the matter. Chisato. The next thing is that we notice an acceleration in metabolism and immunity to toxins and diseases such as AIDS, cancer, diabetes. Well, in short, no disease or virus is able to survive your defenses, which are also improved. Rebecca. It seems that your body has more advantages than disadvantages. Erzin. I understand. Well, at least I won't have to worry about buying medicine. Chisato. That's all for now. Leaving the board from where she raised it, I advise you to rest for a few days. You know, your resistance is incredible. The fact that you're only left with a few broken ribs and external bleeding says a lot about you. Smiling. Well, we have to go. With that said, she and Rebecca headed to the door. Rest Erzin was the last thing she said before the two left the room, leaving a thoughtful Erzin. Meanwhile, the two women were walking through the hospital. Rebecca. It's more, right? Chisato. Rebecca. They found more things in it, didn't they? She asked something serious. Chisato. Yes. That boy isn't normal at all. What surprises me is that he's human. Aside from what I mentioned. He also has immunity to some types of magic. This surprised the brunette. Rebecca. To magic. But what caused that? Chisato. I don't know, but you know. Despite being human, he has the potential to be much stronger than his brother. With a small smile. Rebecca. How do you know? The green-eyed girl didn't respond to that, and she had no intention of doing so. Rebecca noticed this, so she decided to change the subject. Rebecca. By the way. How do we tell him that apart from Dr. Keed masturbating him, he came back to? She couldn't finish the sentence because of how bad and embarrassing it was to see the event. Chisato. To grape him. She completed what the brunette couldn't, although with a slight blush. It's better not to mention it. And I recommend you don't show him that security camera recording. He must have a lot on his mind, so he shouldn't have to carry that too. Rebecca nodded. Although a little annoyed with that person and sad that she couldn't tell Erzin, she had to know after all. Although something she admitted but wouldn't say out loud was that, with the young man's body so toned, it was tempting to do it too. Chapter 5. 6 days ago. In the old mansion of the Haidu, more specifically in the living room, there were 8 women watching television with their eyes wide open. Reporter. The man responsible for destroying the Vatican and murdering religious figures, including the Pope, has been identified as Haidu Erzin. He has been said for some time to be one of the people who have begun to develop superhuman abilities, better known as the superhumans. Reporter. And apparently, that's not the only thing he's committed. After the shocking news, the destruction of multiple historical monuments has also been reported, as well as an attack on the already famous and well-known Area 51. Arena. "I can't be," she said, shocked more than anything by the destruction of the place that she knew very well and fervently expressed her faith in, and also by the fact that he had mentioned the surname of her first love. "Asia?" he said. "In Haidu?" she asked with a trembling voice. For her it was a bad joke, not only because of the destruction and deaths, but because he had been the boy who disappeared from the orphanage where she worked. And the worst thing is that he had the last name of the only person who loved her, cared for her, and was her first friend as well as her first love. None of those present had any idea that there was another Haidu. But the most affected was a certain very unkempt-looking redhead who had left her room because of this. After the death of her boyfriend's parents, she never thought she would hear that last name from someone she didn't know. Ross. But it all happened so fast. What kind of power must he have to cause so much destruction in just 1 week? Hineko. "And where is Kuroka One-sama?" she said, a little stunned by the news. "Zenobia. Went to work early. Bravo. Now the biggest secret organizations will be after that boy. And not only that, but the angel faction will be after him too. Arena. For us angels, the destruction of a place where the great religious figures who represented us and humans lived is something too serious. And the fact that they were murdered makes things worse. Zenobia. Considering the fact that the Vatican was one of the pillars of the world. Everything will go upside down." Bakeno. "But why would he do something like that? He must have known that the Vatican was very important in the world, but what's the reason?" Hineko. "He must be planning something." Rias. "It must be something very bad." She spoke for the first time in years. Present. Erzin. "Damn, how annoying," he said, jumping from building to building in the city of Lilith. He was being chased by a huge amount of demon soldiers who attacked him while the brown-haired man tried to lose them, regardless of the civilians. Erzin. "Do they even know that there are people who can be hurt by them?" He jumped and with a strong movement of his hand, he created a gust of air that sent the demons chasing him flying. After doing that, he stopped on the roof of a building. Erzin. "How did this happen? Hell, they're accusing me of attacking demon family territories and attacking a matriarch of one when I didn't even go near one." He thought nervously, maybe in his world he could hide. But this was demonic territory, and if he tried to clear things up he might end up making them worse. At that moment a magic circle appeared behind him, drawing his attention. From this came a certain black-haired Nekomata. "Erzin. You are? Kuroka. Why are you fighting?" she asked seriously. "Erzin. Why did you fight? Or rather, why are you chasing me? Wait, now that I remember, after you spoke to me in that plaza I saw a picture of you with your name. If I remember correctly, it was Kuroka. Right." The aforementioned said nothing about it and just continued looking at him seriously. More magic circles appeared near where they were, drawing both of their attention. Erzin. "I'm starting to hate those things." Annoyed. Kuroka. "I can't let you go." Erzin. Naya preparing a magic attack, holding back so as not to kill him. The demon soldiers, upon exiting the circles without thinking, launched a magical attack together. Erzin just took a big leap to avoid it. The Nekomata, not being prepared for such an attack, could barely create a barrier. The attacker hit and in doing so the entire building collapsed. Erzin saw this as he prepared to land in a place somewhat far from where the building was destroyed. Erzin. "I guess I'm free of them for now," he said as he continued watching, without realizing that a magic circle appeared below him. By the time she realized it, it was too late. He had disappeared into the circle. Somewhere in Japan, a magic circle appeared in the middle of a forest. From it shot the chestnut tree, somersaulting and landing on its feet. Erzin. "That magic circle was different from those demons," he said, straightening up. He turned to look at the sky and was surprised to see the blue sky. He stared at her for a few more seconds and smiled. Erzin. "I'm back." Smiling and almost a small tear coming out. "I really thought I wouldn't come back." He started walking for a few minutes until he reached a road. Erzin. "All looking both ways. Well, it will be random." Then deciding, in a random direction he started running. Due to his incredible speed, it didn't take him more than a few seconds to reach a city that he recognized as soon as he saw it. Erzin. "Wow, how lucky I am to be back in Tokyo." With a small smile, he headed there. He walked through the city, happy with his luck and to be back in his own world. He didn't realize that people looked at him with fear and hatred and avoided him. The brown-haired boy, being distracted, didn't pay attention to where he was walking and collided with a boy in a high school uniform. Erzin. Oh, sorry," he said, offering his hand to help him. He hadn't been affected by the crash. "Boy." And no, he didn't finish speaking when he realized who was in front of him. Attu with a terrified look. Erzin. I think this is where I'll help you up." Still offering my hand. "Boy." He quickly got up and ran away while screaming in fear. Erzin. "Hey. What's wrong? confused, watching the boy running away as fast as he could. That's when he realized the looks the people around him were giving him. When they saw that the chestnut tree was now looking at them, they trembled with fear, they screamed, some even followed the boy's example and ran away. Erzin. What's going on? They look at me like I'm a Cain. Sirens were heard approaching. Upon seeing what they were, it was seen that there were approximately 20 police patrols and 5 trucks of the same type, from which police officers with anti-Cain equipment, technological armor and special weapons came out. Police. Haidu Erzin. On behalf of the United Nations, you are under arrest for the crimes you committed. Please put your hands where you can see them and surrender voluntarily. He said through a megaphone. Erzin. Oh no, not again, he thought with a confused, worried, disappointed and annoyed look at the same time, and now what are they accusing me of here? I wasn't even in this world, damn it. Clenching his fists tightly. Police. Raise your hands and surrender now, this is your last warning. He spoke again through the megaphone. The brown-haired man changed his gaze to a serious one and saw the police officers. Chapter 6. The chestnut tree was surrounded by police officers ready to shoot him with anti-Cain weapons, by people who were just spectators, and by the press who had just arrived in a helicopter. The teenager looked at them seriously, while thinking about what he was going to do. Erzin. Should I turn myself in? That way I won't have to run around, looking around, no, it wouldn't do any good if I could escape anyway. Those deaf collars don't affect me, plus with the demons looking for me, they can find me, they can take me back to the underworld, and there's nothing in the world that I want to go back to that place. Sighing, and looking at the police chief, I'm not going to turn myself in. Raising his voice, making everyone in the place hear him. Police. Fire. He shouted. The other police officers fired some kind of green laser. But none of those attacks came close to hitting the chestnut tree, as it took a huge leap reaching the roof of the tallest building in the place. Without waiting, he started jumping on the roofs of buildings. The police quickly began chasing him, as did the press helicopter. Haidu Erzin. 3 more helicopters appeared. But these were green in color. Stop right now. They talked about the helicopter. The chestnut tree ignored it and continued jumping without paying attention. After a few seconds of being chased, an energy attack hit him, causing him to stop. Erzin. TCH. Damn, that's the 6th outfit he's ripped. Seeing that the arm of the jacket and part of the back were destroyed, the good thing is that the scarf wasn't affected, taking off the scarf to wrap it in his hand. That was just a warning, so just give yourself up, he spoke again through a megaphone from the helicopter. Erzin. Grrrr. Buck you. Already fed up with the situation, he took a powerful leap towards a distant part of the city, disappearing from the sight of the soldiers and reporters who were recording what was happening. People who saw this were frustrated because they couldn't catch it. But a very small portion of people were relieved by this. And those were the people the brunette saved while still on his training routine. While with a teenager, he had landed in an abandoned part of the city. It was there because the Cains appeared in those parts so frequently that no one dared to live there anymore. At the same time, it was the area where he had once called home. Erzin. Damn. I can't stay calm anymore, kicking a small rock, which was sent flying many kilometers from where it was due to the force with which it was impacted. Oh, since that last fight I had with that yellow guy, my strength increased a little less than double. I wish I could fight him again, with a small smile. If you are confused by the latter, well, I am uploading this theory on YouTube. If you watch chapter 4 you will understand what I am referring to. XD. He continued walking until he reached a specific house. The brown-haired man recognized it. After all, it was just as he had left it. Completely burned, with what was inside visible through the huge holes in the walls. For anyone, the sight was terrifying. But for Erzin, it was nostalgic. Without saying or thinking anything, he entered. It was a 2-story house. The walls were riddled with holes and burned parts. The furniture, the accessories, everything that made up a house was totally destroyed, and there were also signs of a fight. He climbed the stairs, only to find a scene similar to the previous one. The small hallway was very neglected, there was even a huge hole in the floor that the chestnut had to jump over. He felt melancholy seeing his old home like this. He entered a room, and everything was turned into ashes. He looked at the ceiling, and there was a hole that showed the sky. Erzin. What am I going to do now? Even in my own world, I'm a criminal, and the worst part is, I don't even know what I did. Damn, this is getting more and more complicated. Massaging his temple, he tried to think of what he could do. He sighed to calm himself and turned to look at a corner of the room. There he saw something strange, a small circular device, which seemed to be in good condition. He walked over and picked it up. The device was metallic, with what appeared to be a small eye on one end and a button in the middle. Curiously he squeezed it. In doing so, the hologram of a person he didn't want to see even in a painting materialized from the small light. Erzin. Kaguya, he said in a tone of suppressed anger. Kaguya. Oh, hello dear Erzin, she said with a small smile and a knife. Erzin? You, what do you want? How the hell did you know I'd be here? He said angrily. Kaguya. Ooh. How mean, is that how you greet your childhood friend? She asked with feigned sadness. Erzin. We're not friends. So answer the damn question with venom in your voice. Kaguya. Well. You know, you're kind of predictable. That's how I knew you'd be here. Oh, and how do you like the little welcome gift? Saying the last bit cheerfully. Erzin, gift. Kaguya. Yeah, well, you made it just in time for your party. And everyone's invited, you know. Literally everyone, hahaha. Erzin. Party. Everyone. He thought about what the light-haired girl could be talking about until he opened his eyes in realization. You bastard. It was you. Kaguya. It seems you're not as stupid as I thought. I can tell because you came to that conclusion yourself, smiling. Erzin. What the hell did you do that everyone is looking for me for? Kaguya. Ooh. Well, a few pranks. And by prank, I mean destroying several very important places using your image, pointing at the brunette, who opened his eyes in shock. Oh, and I also took the opportunity to do it in the underworld too, although this was just for fun. Erzin. Why the hell are you doing this? We haven't had contact since Chunji died, why are you all doing this now? He asked, looking at the hologram with murderous eyes. Kaguya's gaze went from being animated to being serious. Kaguya. I told you, didn't I? After Junko Ni-san died because of you, I warned you that I would make your life miserable. She raised her voice, which became a little deeper, like that of an older woman. Erzin. She died trying to protect us when Chunji wasn't there. Kaguya. She died because those guys came looking for you. She shouted, then sighed and calmed down anyway. You won't be able to do anything anymore, everyone sees you as a terrorist now. Erzin. You. Damn you, when I find you I'm going to. Kaguya. Are you going to what? Kill me? PFFF, yeah, oh don't make me laugh, you already had the chance once, and you didn't do it. I guess deep down you still love me, right my Erzin? Jahahahaja, she laughed, while the brunette clenched his teeth and the free fist he had. Okay. I say goodbye, I hope you have fun at your party, winking at him, then the hologram disappeared. As soon as that happened, the teenager closed his fist tightly, smashing the small machine in the process. Erzin. That damn thing. He said, trying to calm down and not scream. Chapter 7. 4 days later. In the underworld, a meeting was taking place between the three Mau and the other faction leaders who were allied with each other. They were talking about the most recent issue, or threat. And sadly it was someone who was related to his hero. Azazel. So what are we going to do about that boy? Surzich. I don't know. I certainly never thought he'd do something like this. Michael. I never thought I'd be one of those superhumans that have been appearing. Serafal. Has been destroying important places for both us and humanity, said something serious. Enemu. From what I understand, he also attacked the territories of important demon families here, including the Gremory and Bale clans. Or am I mistaken, Surzich? Looking at the aforementioned, who sighed. Surzich. That's right, I really don't understand what would be the motives he would have to cause chaos. Sarah Erg is so furious since he attacked his mother and he himself wants to go look for him. Yasaka. The dragon's former territory was also completely destroyed and he was the one responsible, although there are more signs of fighting. Gabriel. Who would be capable of fighting him? From what he's shown, he's capable of holding his own with many of us here. Azazel. From the way he left that place, he has proven much more than that, also taking into account that most of the entire underworld trembled, but doesn't it seem strange to you? Bringing his hand to his chin. Auden. What are you talking about, brat? With doubt. Azazel. This all happened too fast. Besides, how could he have come to the underworld if he doesn't have the magic power to use magic circles? Anemu. Maybe you have help from someone who can use them? Ajuka. If so, it will be a big problem, and have they already located him? Serafal. Apparently he returned to the human world. For 4 days, there was a chase in which he was the target. Surzich. It was after they were also chasing him here and Kuroka tried to stop him. Gabriel. So that reinforces the theory that there is someone else involved and that he is helping him. Enemu. By the way, how are you all doing after the destruction of the Vatican? She asked curiously. Michael. Well, it was definitely a blow to our faction. That place was very important. Though passage there was never allowed, not even for us, but it served its purpose. Gabriel. It was also the place with the highest monetary income in the human world. And for some reason, all of their bank accounts were completely emptied. Auden. Do you think that boy did that too? Michael. Well, given everything he's done, it's most likely. Although we shouldn't jump to conclusions about that since I highly doubt it matters to him. Yasaka. How can you be so sure? Maybe he's just doing all this for the money. Azazel. You've heard Gabriel, right? He'd be capable of giving many of us here a run for our money, though I think he's capable of much more. With that, and considering that superhumans are very new, don't you think he'd be capable of subduing all of humanity if he wanted to? If so, money won't do him any good if he can basically get much more than that. The others thought about it for a moment. If that happened, the chaos would reach unimaginable levels. Ajuka. So that's out of the question now. What would happen if he attacks places important to the other factions? Like the Hindus, the Egyptians, or the Greeks? Auden. Well, knowing Zeus, he'd definitely launch an attack on Erzin. And that would reveal us to the humans, causing more problems than we already have. Enemu. Oh, my troubles are back in a big way after 17 years supporting his cheek with his fist. Seraphol. Well, peace isn't something that lasts forever. Gabriel. Even if we wanted it to be that way, giving a sigh of tiredness. Yasaka. Now we must take care of this as soon as possible before it becomes a bigger problem. At that, a small magic circle would appear in Azazel's ear. Azazel. Something wrong? He asked on the call. After a few seconds listening to the reason for the call, he opened his eyes in surprise, drawing the attention of everyone there. Later, the small circle disappeared. Surzich. Did something happen, Azazel? Michael. Yes, you look surprised. Enemu? Said Azazel, she said something serious. The fallen man gave a sigh to calm himself and put on a serious face. Azazel. There was a new attack. Everyone hearing that looked at him in surprise. Ajuka. Where? Getting serious. 1. Did they attack the Rhesus laboratory? A woman's voice was heard. 2. Yes. That was also our next target, another woman spoke, only this one had a slightly deeper voice. 3. This kid is out of control. Look at him attacking the fallen angel's most important laboratory. This time it was a man who spoke up. 1. So, shall we go for him at once? I mean, that's why we brought him back to the human world, right? 2. That's right. But let's let the shock subside a bit first. 3. But what would happen if he didn't want to? 2. I don't think I have a choice. Smiling. 1. How are you so sure? I mean, he could easily beat us. Curious. 2. Trust me, I'm sure we'll get the most powerful human that has ever existed and will ever exist in this world, widening her smile. 3. According to Chisato, that boy has more than just strength, putting his hand on his chin. 2. Immunity to many things and some types of magic. Which could also be useful to us. Erzin. What the hell? Who did this? Seeing a completely destroyed land and people in robes dead in different ways. The press had arrived, so without waiting, he disappeared in a burst of speed. But it was too late. Because he was distracted by the destruction, they had been able to record him long enough to believe it was really him. Chapter 8. Nera Erzin. It's been a week since I returned. And well. It's not what I expected. It turns out I destroyed the Vatican, murdered the Pope and the Pontiffs, stole all the money from the already destroyed Vatican, and most recently, I destroyed one of the most important laboratories in the world. I know Kaguya did all that. But everyone is so convinced I did it that trying to reason won't help. Oh, something I forgot to mention is that I got involved with a bunch of gangsters and drug dealers who are looking for me. What the hell did that stupid girl do? Almost the whole damn planet is looking for me. Aside from that, demons, angels and fallen ones have been bothering me, all in 3 damn days. And if that wasn't enough, a bunch of agents, both normal and superhuman, have been a bucking pain in the ass. And the worst part of all this, I'm still wearing the same ruined clothes. Thanks to all this, I have not been able to buy myself an outfit of clothes. The small basement where I lived was completely ransacked. Fortunately, the positions Chunji had given me were still hidden where I left them. My mattress was also fine, although neglected. So once again, I stayed there indefinitely. That feeling of boredom returned. Now much more limited, I didn't know what to do in the basement. I didn't even have the small television anymore. I also didn't have anything to eat, although if I had enough, that didn't bother me for now. I'd gone weeks without eating. I'm somewhat used to it. I guess I'll have to get used to this, being shunned by almost all of humanity and part of the supernatural. I think Chunji's dream will end badly for me. But well, it's not like mine is relevant now, since I realized it's impossible to unify humanity with the supernatural, considering they see us only as simple humans. Even if that's not the case now, they'll still see us from below. Chunji left me the legacy of showing that humans can be strong allies, as well as strong enemies. But it's not something that interests me anymore. I just consider it as a hobby now. But anyway, I'm tired of wearing these clothes. And if they won't let me buy them, then I have no choice but to steal them. End of Erzin's narration. The chestnut was preparing to run and look for clothes that he could take. He started running at an immense speed. But then, a magic circle appeared in front of him. Erzin. Oh, damn it. He shouted, wanting to stop, but he couldn't do it in time and ended up disappearing. Elsewhere, more specifically in an empty room, a sky blue magic circle appeared. From this, the chestnut tree flew out and hit the wall. Due to the speed he was going, he was unable to brake and continued, coming face to face with the wall before impacting with it. The teenager recovered and looked around. Erzin. That magic circle was the same as the one that brought me back, he thought, analyzing the place. He was so focused on that he didn't expect what happened next. Hi Erzin said a voice, coming from a megaphone that was embedded in a corner of the room. The sudden talk made the brown-haired boy jump so much that he grabbed his chest. Erzin. Ah damn, I almost had a bucking heart attack. He shouted angrily, who is it? People who want to propose something to you, she spoke again, this time she noticed it was a woman's voice. I hadn't noticed it because of the shock. Erzin. Propose to me? What do you want to propose to me? Confused. First of all, we want to know if you are willing to listen without attacking anyone, he said this time in a very serious and stoic tone. Erzin. Attack them? Ah, it's because of everything that's happening, right? Well, don't worry, if they don't attack me, everything will be calm, he said, this time returning to his neutral expression and disinterested tone. Do we have your word? Still stoic and serious. Erzin. Yes, whatever. Saying that, once again the same magic circle appeared below him, disappearing in this. He reappeared in a rather luxurious room, as if it were a mansion. Erzin. These guys really live it up, he said, looking at the whole room in detail. Thank you, it was also thanks to you in fact. Erzin turned to see who said that and saw a very beautiful woman with white hair, thin, light brown eyes. Her breasts were medium-sized, but that didn't take away from her attractiveness at all. Rather, it made her look better. She was simply beautiful. Erzin noticed this, but was not at all perturbed. Erzin. Hello and thanks to me. Curious. Well, when you destroyed the Vatican, we took advantage of all the money they had. Erzin. Oh. Well, since seeing her stoically. Oh, sure. My name is Christina, nice to meet you, hi to Erzin with a smile, the already named Christina. Erzin. Just call me Erzin, I find it uncomfortable to be called by that last name. Christina. I understand. I won't ask why, it must be personal. The chestnut, somewhat surprised, nodded. Christian. Well, in that room I told you I had something to propose to you, looking at him fixedly. Erzin. Aha. Christina. Well, seeing everything you've done both here and in the underworld, my group and I have made a decision. Erzin. Ah, yes, look, you may not believe me. But I didn't do any of the things people think I did. Christina. What are you talking about? Confused. Erzin. All the crimes I didn't actually do them. Christina. I don't understand. Clearly it was you. I sent my colleague Laura to investigate you, and you were even involved in the destruction of the labs, arching an eyebrow. Erzin. Oh, that's it. Well, the last one was an accident. I heard a collapse, went to see what was happening, and by the time I got there everything was destroyed, and of course, they recorded me standing there, he said still stoically. The white-haired girl narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. This made the brunette uncomfortable, and with his hands he covered his crotch, thinking that he could see that part. Christina. I believe you, smiling again. Erzin, really? Christina. Yes, wasn't that what you wanted? Erzin. Yes, but normally an interrogation follows and that's it, stopping covering his crotch. Christina. Well, I have an ability that allows me to know if someone is lying or not, and I couldn't sense any lies in your statement, standing up and approaching the teenager. Erzin. Wow, it can be a double-edged sword because someone might tell you something nice and it might not be true. Christina. Yes, I realized that a long time ago. Being superhuman has its disadvantages, don't you think? Erzin. And she is superhuman, he thought. Christina. Well, what I was telling you is that my group and I have made a decision, and that is that you join us. Erzin. And what do they do? Christina. We are a group of mercenaries. Both human and supernatural. Erzin. Mercenaries, huh? Well, that sounds crazy. But wouldn't that be detrimental to you? After all, almost the entire planet is looking for me, including many dangerous mafias and criminal groups. Kid, we're all criminals here, wanted by secret and special organizations, even by the supernatural, said another woman, entering the room. They both turned to look at her, and the white-haired girl smiled. Christina. Laura, how was your mission? Laura. Tedious, I need a vacation. She is Laura XD. Christina. Well, maybe you can if you help the boy get up here, pointing at the brunette, who looked at her as if puzzled. Erzin. When I accept. Laura. Hi to Erzin. I must thank you. You've taken a lot of work off our shoulders. She approached him with a smile. Erzin. I didn't do it neutral. Laura. Wow, how expressionless, what do you mean you didn't do it? Confused. Christina. He didn't do it, I already checked. Laura. You used that with him, but then what's the point of him joining us? Even more confused. Christina. That's why she took out a small device and from it came a holographic screen. In this one he showed a recording of the chestnut having a devastating fight with a cloak nail in the ancient territory of the dragons. It's not a joke if it's who you think if you know who it is and you think of him when reading this XD. Here I leave you the video of when it happened. The fic is mine, but the cameo ones belong to Mr. Fanfic. His theories are really cool, I recommend them. And how that territory remained afterwards. Laura looked at the teenager with great surprise, who gave a small smile when he remembered that. Laura. Oh okay then, we'll have to put a price on it. Erzin. Ah. Price. No, listen, I'm not going to be a prostitute. Annoyed. Christina. You misunderstood, everyone here has a price for their services as mercenaries. The more difficult the task and the more powerful the mercenary, the more it costs. It's not the service you think, with an amused smile at the younger man's antics. Erzin. Oh, they should have started there earlier, returning to his usual attitude. Laura. And since we already know that you are the strongest, then we will put the highest price on you. Erzin. Okay, how much would you give me? Curious. Christina. About $6 million. This surprised the chestnut tree. Erzin. Is that the highest price here? But what do they do? Who are these people? He asked himself mentally until a doubt came to his head, and how much of that is mine? Paying more attention to the answer. Christina. Oh, well 50% of the pay. Erzin was even more surprised by the answer. Erzin. What the hell? Then I'll have 3 million all to myself. Now those are offers. But still. I can't be too confident. These guys brought me out of nowhere, I have to be alert. He thought this somewhat seriously, but well, it's not like he has a choice. Christina. So Erzin, do you accept? With a smile and offering her hand. The brown-haired boy thought about it for a moment. Finally, he resigned himself and shook her hand. Erzin. Fine, I'll become one of you, but be careful, it's only because of my situation. He said this a little more seriously. Christina. Of course, giving a warm smile. The purple-haired girl only saw how from this moment on she would have a new partner. Chapter 9. Christina. Laura, why don't you take Erzin to his new room? Laura. Oh well, I have nothing better to do. By the way, my room too. Starting to walk towards some stairs. Come on, Erzin. The brunette followed her without saying anything, leaving the white-haired girl alone. Christina. That boy has a very rough hand. During the tour, he could see how luxurious some of the mansion was. A single accessory that he saw must have cost more than the most expensive thing he had bought in his entire life. The purple-haired girl was left thinking about what had happened recently. Without a doubt, the arrival of the miner would make things easier for them. Laura. I must thank you again, calling the brown-haired man's attention. Erzin, why? Laura. At first we were a group of low-class mercenaries, but thanks to you, we managed to have what we have now. Erzin. Me. Confused. Laura. Yes, oh sorry, I forgot it wasn't you. He. Erzin. Okay, with a poker face. Laura. But still, your help will be very useful. There is a girl who might bother you a little, but you will get along well. Erzin. Clear monotonously. Laura. Oh, with a drop of sweat on her head. After a few seconds, they arrived at the room that would be Erzin's. Laura opened the door, revealing a 5-star hotel-style room. It literally had its own living room, balcony, bathroom, along with a bedroom. Erzin. They really live it up, looking at Laura out of the corner of his eye. Laura. Well, we have someone who was in charge of completely emptying the Vatican account basically, that place is completely extinct. Smiling. Erzin. Look, I'll be honest with you. Turning to look at her, I was going to destroy it anyway and kill everyone who had something to do with that place, he said, leaving the purple-haired girl surprised. Laura. Huh? And why? She asked, interested. Erzin. My brother informed me a long time ago that what they were doing there was unforgivable. Looking down seriously, although of course, he wouldn't do it as it turned out, suddenly returning to his normal attitude. Laura. What a change, and what were they doing? Curious. Erzin. If I told you, you would have preferred to have remained in doubt. Laura looked at him strangely. According to her, this boy was very strange. But at least now he knows that he is not someone who kills for pleasure, as most people believe. Laura. Well, I won't ask any more questions for now. Go to your new room, I'll call you when the others come back. The brown-haired man listened and could better notice how luxurious it was. Laura. All rooms have a soundproofing spell inside. No sound will escape from the room. Erzin. Oh, there are no cameras, right? Looking at her suspiciously. Laura. Ha 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 ha, no, of course not here. What is most respected is privacy, so don't worry and relax in the meantime, smiling with amusement. Erzin. Still looking at her with suspicion, but after a few seconds she calmed down. Well, I guess you're right. Laura. Sure. Oh, there's a laptop in the living room that might be useful. It's not being monitored, by the way. And inside the huge wooden board is a TV that you can take out with a button on the remote control above your bed, she explained. Erzin. Did you prepare the room? Looking at her with an arched eyebrow. Laura. No, that's how they all are, although yours was prepared in advance. You can decorate it however you like. Oh, by the way, how old are you? She asked, strangely interested. Erzin. I'm 16. Why was I so interested in that? Laura. Well, everyone should know. I'm 23 and Christina is 28. Erzin. I see, disinterested and looking around. Laura. One last thing, the girl I mentioned is a cradle snatcher. So be careful. Erzin. Oh well, wait, what? He asked, turning to see her, but the purple-haired girl had already left the room and closed the door. He stood there for a few seconds. Erzin. Well, first things first, heading to the closet. He opened it and saw that there were already clothes of every design, of course they were all for men. He smiled and closed the closet. He went to the bathroom and could see that it was huge, with a thermal bath. The brunette's smile widened and without waiting he entered. 20 minutes later. The brunette came out of the shower with only a towel around his waist, revealing his overly well-formed body full of scars. Erzin. I think I won't have to use that spell to hide my scars anymore, seeing the aforementioned ones on his torso. He went to the closet and took out some clothes and put them on. It was a pair of black pants, white tennis shoes, and a somewhat tight jacket, revealing some of his body. This last thing made him uncomfortable. Erzin. Let's see, he murmured, taking the television remote control. Looking at it curiously, he pressed a button. This caused two wooden plates to separate and from this came out a rather large flat-screen television. The chestnut saw this with his eyes slightly open. This kind of thing was new to him. And the fact that everything happened so quickly didn't help. Using his basic knowledge, he pressed the red button on the remote. Upon doing so, the television immediately turned on. I had the main channel, where they were giving the news. He widened his eyes a little more in surprise. The image was simply perfect for him, he was already very used to ordinary televisions, with poor image and signal. This was simply beyond their expectations. He smiled seeing this. But the smile disappeared instantly upon hearing the following. Reporter. Today at 9:40 in the morning, another attack by the individual Erzin Haidu, also known as the human monster, has been reported. Erzin. What was missing? Now they call me nicknames annoying. Reporter. This time, it wasn't a place. It was someone, and it's none other than the Minister of Global Health, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, she said with a serious expression, then showed the doctor's dismembered body. Although of course, they censored with blurred images those parts that showed too much blood. Erzin watched this with a face devoid of emotion. Though deep inside, the anger was palpable. Erzin. Kagaya, you are a bitch. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft knocks on the door that made their characteristic sound. The chestnut calmed down and went to open the door. In doing so, he could see Christina. Christina. I see you're ready, let's go downstairs, the others have arrived, she said, looking at the teenager. He could clearly see his body, and he was very surprised to see that someone so young had such a marked and defined body. But he knew how to hide it perfectly. Erzin. Oh, right, he turned off the television, threw the remote control onto the bed with great care, and accompanied the white-haired girl. They went down to the room where he first appeared. There were 3 people there. One was a man, with a somewhat muscular build, brown hair with light tips, brown eyes, and a neutral gaze. The second was another man with a body a little smaller than the previous one. He had blue hair, gray eyes, a somewhat disinterested look and a smile. And last but not least, a woman with green eyes, blonde hair, white skin, a figure similar to Laura's. The look she gave him was somewhat serious. Although his thoughts were different. Christina. The blue-haired boy is called Shunto, the blonde is called Liz, and the brunette is called Lux. Who's also my partner, smiling broadly at the end. Shunto. So you're the little devil who's been causing trouble, huh, with an amused smile. Lux. Christina already explained to us that he wasn't there. But still, his abilities are unique, she said seriously. Shunto. Yes, I heard with boredom. Lux. Anyway, approaching the younger chestnut, who only looked at him with disinterest, and you must be aware of your situation. Erzin. It's hard not to be, when almost the entire planet is looking for me. Shunto. And yet you're like nothing's happening. Anyone would be very worried or desperate, with a smile. The teenager didn't say anything to that. And he wasn't exactly cool about it, actually. I was very angry. The blonde looked at Erzin strangely without anyone noticing. Except for Christina, who quickly knew how to interpret that look. She was practically staring him down. Christina. Wow, looking at the brown-haired boy surreptitiously, what bad luck you have, you just attracted the person with the most contradictory emotions in the group, smiling amused, besides being a cradle robber, she thought, and suddenly an idea came to her mind. Liz getting her attention, why not teach the boy everything he needs to know? The blonde looked at her in surprise, and saw the teenager who hadn't been paying much attention until now. Liz? And why me? Confused, why doesn't one of those two do it? Pointing at the light brown-haired boy and the blue-haired boy. Christina. Come on, don't be shy, with the boy smiling mockingly. Liz was visibly irritated by this. Laura. Yes Liz, he won't bite you, she said, entering the room. Liz. HMP. Shouldn't you be on a mission? Annoyed. Laura. As you can see, I'm done. And I was also kind enough to show her room and what was in there. She's helping out, isn't she? Her tone of voice was even more mocking than Christina's. The blonde clenched her fists, a vein popping out on her forehead in anger. Shunto. Come on Liz, calm down, it's just a matter of explaining some things here and exploring the mansion a little, don't complicate things, smiling at the situation. The woman sighed to calm herself. Liz. Okay, come with me kid. Reluctantly she started walking. The teenager didn't understand what was happening. He looked at Christina, confused, and she nodded at him to follow her. Still with doubts, he just listened and started following the blonde who was already leaving the garden. Laura approached the group and smiled with amusement. Laura. I guess it couldn't be helped, right? She asked, looking at Christina. Christina. Yes. But at least they should get to know each other a little better. Shunto. We all know what's going to happen, haha. For him, things were getting better and better. He had a feeling that with Erzin here, things would get even more fun. Lux. Yes. She has a strange addiction to boys younger than her, although she's never been with one something serious, but she couldn't deny that this amused her. Laura. Should we stop her when she passes by? She asked curiously. The others and she thought about it for a moment. Everyone. Nah, they said in unison, they were curious about what would happen in the future. Chapter 10. Liz. Well, you better listen carefully because I won't repeat it, she said while walking through the mansion's large garden next to the chestnut tree. We are a group of mercenaries, I suppose you already know what that is. Erzin. Yes, he answered neutrally. Liz. Okay, but we don't just do that. We also take on problems that the worlds and supernatural governments ignore, or we dismantle horrible things they did. The Rhesus Labs and the Vatican were two of our targets. But whatever destroyed them took your physical image and did it by surprise. The brown-haired boy remembered what Kagaya told him. I didn't know if it was her doing it herself. As he recalled, she had the ability to change her appearance. But not to her, but to other people. However, it was just that. It was just an appearance, it couldn't give power or strength. And much less the one he had. Maybe in all the time they didn't talk, she evolved that ability and was able to change her appearance, and with her magic, she was somehow able to do such destruction. Well, that was the theory he had. Liz. I'm sure Christina explained the prices to you, turning to look at him. Erzin just nodded and looked away, taking in the garden in detail. Taking advantage of this, the blonde saw him with a smile and eyes that were anything but normal. Liz. This damn kid, widening her smile. I didn't know why. But for some time now she had developed a liking for boys younger than her. But above all, may these be strong. I couldn't explain it, it just turned her on too much. I knew the brown hair next to me was too strong. I had seen the recording of the fight he had with that bold guy. Seeing how the teenager's blows had a devastating force ended up exciting her too much. So much so that he couldn't sleep at night, and all the next day he couldn't think of anything else but have him in your bed. And I didn't fantasize about anything else since then, and his well-formed body only made me want him more. This feeling was slowly becoming an obsession, and she was aware of it. That's why she was also a little upset, she blamed him for that. Which was one of the many contradictory thoughts she had at any given moment. She couldn't contain herself for long. To calm down, he tried to bite his lower lip. But unconsciously, he licked his lips while the blush he had since the brunette was distracted grew until the middle of his face was completely red. This was accompanied by a trickle of drool running down the corner of his lip. All this simply sums it up in one sentence. She was a potential pervert. The brown-haired boy was so distracted at this moment that he didn't notice the danger that the girl at his side represented. Although fortunately for him, if you can call it that, he no longer had a virginity that could be taken away. Before I did something I imagined I would enjoy. The chestnut tree asked a question. Erzin. Are there more members in this group? He asked, turning to look at her. As quickly as he could he straightened up and wiped the drool off his face. Although I still had a little blush. Liz. There's one. You might know her. Her name is Shizato Hasegawa. She spoke as professionally as she could. In fact, there was someone else, her name was Rebecca. But she was killed by a cane. The brown-haired man recognized the names, especially because they were the people who informed him about the faults his body had while training. Erzin. I understand he said this because of the death of the nurse who cared for him for a while. Liz. Chisato is the only one here with a clean criminal record. She handles the finances, secretly representing us. If it weren't for her, we'd have a ton of money we couldn't spend. Now that we're back to normal, I'll show you the entire mansion. It would be annoying having to search for you just because you got lost. Thus, the blonde toured the mansion with a teenager. And it should be noted that he was more surprised. There was a huge dining room, a swimming pool next to a jacuzzi, a training camp, a sauna, a gym, a cinema, a huge kitchen, even a private airport with private planes. Erzin. So, if they have all the Vatican's money, why do they continue with the missions? Liz. Well, I guess it's Christina's whim. Honestly, nobody pays much attention to that we make money, so it's no problem, she shrugged. Erzin. Okay. So, when will I start with the missions? Curious. Liz. They usually test you first, but for obvious reasons, you don't need it. So I can't say, she said dryly, but stay alert, it could happen at any time. They returned to the room, where there was no one left. Erzin. And what do you do when you're not on missions? Liz. Whatever you want. As long as it doesn't affect this island. Erzin. Island. Liz. Oh, didn't I tell you? We're on an island that's our sole property. Why do you think we don't have luxury cars instead of airplanes? With an amused smile. Erzin. Okay, well see you Liz going up to her recent room. Liz. My name is Liz. Annoyed. Erzin. Yes, that ending up going completely up to the second floor. The blonde stared in the direction the brunette went. The blush along with a perverted smile appeared on her face. She brought her legs together and rubbed them together. Liz. Damn. With that last thought she ran towards an advisor that the brunette didn't notice. Being on the third floor, he quickly went to his room, locking the door. Rias. Sirzich, what does this mean? Shouted the Retit entering the Mao's office. Sirzich. Rias, finally. Rias. Finally, nothing. She was approaching with hostile intentions. But she was stopped by a certain silver-haired maid. Grafiya. Rias Oju-sama, please calm down, she said seriously. Rias. Don't get involved, Grafiya, I'm sure you knew about this too. Sirzich. Rias, make Grafiya marry and tell us why you're so upset, he said something serious. Rias. You and the other leaders knew about the existence of a younger brother, Ice, and you didn't tell us anything. Looking at him furiously. The Retit understood this. He wasn't surprised, since with all this it was obvious that at any moment he would know. Sirzich. I understand Rias, now I understand why you're upset, but how did you know Issei was related to you? Rias. When the news came out that he is now a terrorist, the girls and I started investigating and we found a hospital file which indicated that Ice's mother had a second child a year after the Trihexa invasion, she said, calming down a bit but still sounding annoyed. Sirzich. I see Issei's death made them decide to move to another city after a year Erzin was born. But due to some problems during childbirth, Miki Haidu died. The Retit listened to this attentively. Sirzich. When Erzin turned 1, Lord Goru was in a car accident that ended in his death. Since we were too busy rebuilding our respective factions, no one could take him in. So in an attempt to give him a somewhat normal life, we left him in an orphanage and from there we didn't hear from him again. We hoped he would be adopted and not find out that his biological family had anything to do with supernatural matters. But with this last thing that happened, I can see that it didn't turn out that way at all, he said seriously. Rias. We could have taken care of him, we could have raised him, why didn't you leave him in our care? Increasing her annoyance. Sirzich. Rias, you and the other girls weren't in a good state of mind after Issei's death. You also had no experience raising a baby. I also asked our mother to take care of him, but the damned council elders found out about this and they deliberately banned any humans from entering the underworld. Rias. You were afraid we'd neglect or spoil him. But the outcome of your decision was worse. Who knows what they did to him to make him do all this? Besides being a very powerful superhuman. At what the Retit said, Grafiya thought of a lot of possibilities of what could have happened to him. She would have been more than happy to take care of the baby from the first moment she saw it. But because her faction was in crisis and her husband needed her, she couldn't do it. Now seeing the destruction she was causing, the feeling of regret was overwhelming her. Rias was mostly very angry with her brother. I knew that at that moment I was not in my best condition. However, he was the little brother of the person she loved. She felt that with her friends, they could have given her a normal life. Even if they had steered clear of the supernatural forever, they wouldn't have cared. Surzich. Rias, since you found out about his existence, did you remember Issei, and did you think that if you had raised him, you would have done the same as him? He asked seriously. He would have liked to have Erzin as his son too. But if he couldn't see his son Milikas very often before, he would have had even less time to take care of him. Iridid remained silent. The sadness of having lost her fiancé would have made her do everything possible to make him equal to Issei. Of course, I would omit the perverted part. But in every respect it would have been the same. The other girls would not have been better than her. And who knows, maybe they would have done something worse to the poor child seeing him just like the firstborn Haidu. He sighed and calmed down completely. Rias. And now what will they do? He asked seriously. Surzich. Well, for now, we only have his appearance taking a picture of a magic circle and passing it to his sister. She saw this and opened her eyes a little in surprise. She had to admit he was attractive. But that look in his eyes made her uncomfortable. Something had definitely happened to him. Rias. Where did they get it from? Surzich. There were reports of underground tournaments in a part of the central city a while back. He was involved there and many witnessed his strength. Rias. Of his strength. Grafiya. With one blow she blew the head off a fallen angel of a decent power level. Rias. So he was here. That matches what Kuroka told us. Surzich. Kuroka. What did he tell you? Rias. Before she attacked, Kuroka told us she had met someone by the name of Erzin. Although she only said he was interesting. Surzich. So you met him. Well, tell Kuroka to come here tomorrow. I need her to explain more about it to me. Rias. Good. Now, I'm going to prepare a magic circle. Surzich. Rias calling his attention. I'm sorry. For not being strong enough. And letting Issei have to sacrifice himself, he said with a sad expression. Rias just looked at him for a second without saying anything. Rias. See you disappearing into the magic circle, unaware that she had dropped the photo. The maid approached and lifted her up. Like the deed, the brunette's expression in the photo made her uncomfortable. But this time, it was mixed with concern. Grafiya. What happened to you? She asked mentally. Chapter 11. The next morning. Erzin was coming down the stairs to the dining room. I hadn't been able to sleep well. The room was quite large and he was used to sleeping in a smaller than average room. He even felt uncomfortable in the hotels of the underworld. But who was he to complain? Upon entering the dining room, he found the others at the table eating. There was a great banquet on the long table in the place. Erzin. This will definitely take some getting used to, he thought. Shunto. Erzin, come. Pointing to a chair next to him. The brown-haired boy looked at him strangely. But he ignored it and sat down next to him. Christina. Help yourself to whatever you want, looking at him with a smile while grabbing Lux's hand. The chestnut tree said nothing and served himself food on a plate that was in front of him. 5 minutes later. Everyone was somewhat surprised at the amount of food the chestnut tree ate. Although I tried to eat moderately, I still ate fast and in large quantities. Shunto. How long has it been since you ate? Arching his eyebrow with a smile. Erzin. He chewed what he had in his mouth and swallowed it well for about 5 days. Or I think 6, trying to remember. Laura. Really? Thinking it was a joke. Erzin. Yes, but it's nothing. I'm used to enduring hunger for a few weeks. My record was 2 months. Shunto. Did you really set a goal for that? Erzin. Yes. I saw it as a game or something like that. Laura. Oh, something I wanted to ask you. Yesterday you told me something about your brother. Were you talking about Haidu Issei? She asked curiously. The others, hearing that, paid attention. They knew that Issei Haidu was the faction's hero and also that their new member was his familiar. Erzin. No, I'm not talking about him. I know he's my biological brother, but he died before I was born. Or so I've been told. Those present were disappointed to hear that. Laura. So when you mentioned a brother, it must have been someone important to you. Erzin. Yes, that's it, he said, with an imperceptible smile, which disappeared in an instant. Liz. And if he's not with you, that means he's dead too, right? She asked simply. Sometimes she could be a bit insensitive. Erzin. Yes, that too. Christina. Okay. We don't want to overwhelm you with questions, so we'll give a warning, getting everyone's attention. Lux. Chisato will be here this afternoon to celebrate Erzin's arrival and that he will have a mission in 2 days, he said with a small smile. He did like those celebrations. The most excited was Shunto, who was eager to be with Laura, who, while happy about it, wasn't that excited. She seemed calmer. Liz looked at the brunette with a smile that was not at all trustworthy. And finally, Erzin, who was more confused than anything else. He had never been to a party. He wasn't too keen on the idea of being with lots of people. But the thing about the mission did make him curious. Shunto. Hey Erzin, do you think we should exchange techniques? Erzin? What? Surprised. Shunto. You know, train and teach each other combat techniques, what do you say? Erzin. I don't think it's a good idea but I'm already used to my new strength, so I think I can contain the following, he thought well, I have nothing else to do shrugging his shoulders. Shunto. Okay. Then let's go. He quickly got up and went out the door to the training ground. The teenager also stood up and left, but not before grabbing a donut and eating it on the way. Christina. Luxad, I will have to complete the Erzin mission, what will you do? She asked the other two girls. Liz. I'll go watch his training, she said immediately. Laura. Ooh well I think me too, I have nothing else to do. Lux. Don't forget, you mustn't make that boy angry. We don't know what he can do, he said seriously. Laura. Of course, she said something serious anyway. The blonde hadn't heard, she just got up and ran to the field. The blue-haired boy and the brown-haired boy had already arrived at the training camp, which was outdoors. Shunto headed to a small cellar that was a few meters away. Upon opening it, he saw a couple of various weapons such as spears, bows, scythes, staffs, flails, and others from the modern era. Shunto took out some other swords with chains. The ends that were not part of the swords he hooked onto his pants, and they shone blue. Erzin on the other hand, just watched as he finished eating his donut. Shunto. Hey, aren't you taking a gun? Erzin. Ooh I'm swallowing no, I fight with my hands. Shunto. Ooh, bare fist, huh? Well, that's how it will be, then he unhooked the chains from his pants and threw the weapons into the cellar. Erzin. It wasn't necessary, but oh well walking to the middle of the field. The adult stood in front of him and got into a fighting stance. Erzin did the same, only he was calmer. In the distance on a small mountain, you could see a blonde and a purple-haired girl looking at the countryside. From there you could see the training sessions perfectly. Of the two, it was the blonde who was more impatient. Her partner noticed this and rolled her eyes. On the field the two opponents were still in their respective poses. At that, the gray-eyed boy's legs lit up a little, with a bluish coloration. From one moment to another, he appeared in front of Erzin with a flash of light the same color as his legs. That attack was easily dodged by the chestnut tree. Shunto. He changing his trajectory and lighting up his arms, he launched a huge amount of quick punches blast hits. The blows were so fast that it seemed like he had many arms throwing punches. But it was no use, as the teenager was unfazed by the speed and continued to dodge with great ease. Laura. He's dodging Shunto's blast hits. She said surprised, the last time she saw Shunto use that technique was against Lux and he was already having a hard time blocking them. The blonde watched this in amazement and excitement. Her partner's blows had a gigantic force and a blinding speed. And the fact that the chestnut dodges them with ease said a lot about his skills. Shunto. Gosh, your reflexes are something else, stopping his attack. Erzin moved away a few meters, he had calculated the speed and force of the blows. So he already had an idea of how he should attack. Erzin. You are fast preparing to attack. The blue-haired boy saw this and also prepared himself. His veins lit up blue. Shunto. What are you waiting for? Without saying anything, the brown-haired boy went on the attack. His speed was noticeably greater than that of Shunto. Something that surprised him and the spectators. Erzin. And now raising his left fist, repetitive normal combo. The amount of punches the teenager threw was simply enormous. The speed goes without saying. Shunto had a hard time dodging the blows, he could notice that their force was a little greater than his own. And not only that, these blows had important parts of the body as their trajectory. Erzin stopped and saw how the blue-haired man was breathing with difficulty. Shunto. Shit, you really are fast. Lighting up his arms and legs again, he launched himself again with a kick. The brown-haired man dodged it and taking advantage of the fact that it passed by, he hit him in the stomach, burying him on the ground. Shunto. Og. Spitting saliva. Erzin. Your power looks great, you know. Still with his fist stuck in Shunto's stomach. Both girls had their eyes wide open. Not only because of the teenager's quick blows, but also because he knocked down the blue-haired boy with one blow. Liz. Great, she whispered with a blush while rubbing her legs together. Laura. This guy. He's so strong, I can't believe he's human, she said in amazement. Shunto. He with his illuminated fist, he gave him a strong blow that pushed him away. Erzin. I think I put my body too soft, he thought, remembering how he pushed him away with a blow. Shunto. I knew you were strong. But I was really hoping for more. Smiling. Hey, I heard the name of a technique. What was it? Trying to remember. Erzin. The repetitive normal combo. Shunto. Yes, that's it. Animated, how is that? Erzen. Well, in itself, it's inspired by a technique I've already seen, remembering Saitama's consecutive normal hits. Shunto. I understand I have more techniques too. But almost all of them are with my swords clutching his stomach. Erzen. Okay. So, shall we continue? Shunto. Hahaha, if we keep going you'll kill me. You don't look tired at all. Even the blows he dodged affected me, noticing several cuts all over his body, and most of them were bleeding. Erzen. Oh. Okay, expressionless. Shunto. Sure, hey, if you want, later we can play some video games in my room. I have several, pointing with his thumb at the mansion, although of course, I'll have to heal first. You can just go. Erzen. Sure was the only thing he said. Shunto. Well, we don't see, he said as he headed to the mansion. Laura. Hey Liz, what if he couldn't finish, because when he turned to look at her, she was no longer there. Oh, with a poker face. 3 hours later. The chestnut was walking down the hallway on the 3rd floor of the mansion, looking for Shunto's room. He assumed he would at least be bandaged. Besides, he set out, and that's what he's doing. He passed by a room with a half-open door. The ooh-ah-ha-eh was heard from inside the room. Erzen. And that. Weren't the rooms supposed to have anti-sound spells? Maybe it won't work with a door like that. He approached with some curiosity to see what those noises were. How he would regret that decision. As she peered through the small opening, her eyes widened. That was nothing more and nothing less than Liz's room. But that was not the surprising thing, but what he does towards the owner of that room. She was on top of the bed, with her legs open, without panties, with a transparent liquid on her legs coming from her crotch. Liz. Ah, and ah. She moaned loudly, while her fingers moved wildly in her intimacy. You are Erzen. Erzen? He said my name, what the hell? He thought, surprised. He knew very well what he was doing. And now he knew who he was thinking about while doing it. Liz? D-damn kid, ah. Moving her fingers faster. It's your T-blame, ah. Arching her back and throwing her head back. Every time she thought about the brunette, she would simply get turned on. Every time she saw him and heard his voice, it was easier for her to control her excitement. Her cheeks were a deep red, and a smile of complete perversion adorned her face. She also had slight spasms, due to the pleasure she was giving herself. Liz, you Erzen, ah. You will be responsible, ha. This feeling that she felt for the brunette was going further. If this continued at this rate, he would end up raping the teenager. Every night she fantasized about Erzen taking her as his own, and taking her virginity. The mere thought of Erzen touching her naked body only made her avoid her more and more. He brought his free hand to his chest and began to grope it. Liz. Erzen, make me yours. You Erzen. Her smile became more foolish, and a thread of blood began to come out of her nose. The sweat did not stop coming out of her body. A large part of her sheets were completely wet, either from sweat or vaginal juices that went down to the sheet, making that specific area completely soaked. Erzen. Okay, that's enough, he said, moving away from the door and going to look for Shunto's room again, leaving the blonde with her own thing. That chick is crazy. Why was she thinking about me while she was masturbating? Ah, now I won't be able to get that image out of my head. He thought with some annoyance. He hoped that the video games would help him forget what he had just seen. Elsewhere, Kaguya was coming out of a bathroom with a towel covering her torso and crotch. He dressed and went to a laboratory room. There was the typical laboratory stuff there. Tubes, experimental liquids, technological devices, etc. But what caught the most attention was a large capsule with a red liquid. Inside it, a humanoid figure could be seen in a fetal position while floating in the liquid. Kaguya. It won't be long. I never thought that Erzen would have such an enormous growth in strength so quickly, but you'll take care of him, putting her hand on the vibrio in the capsule. She smiled. Kaguya. It was a good idea to use you after all. My hatred towards Erzen is nothing compared to yours, smiling more widely. It's a shame, I'll have to get rid of the first one, haha. Let's see what he'll do against someone with the same strength as him. Chapter 12. Shunto. You learn quickly, he said, looking at the game projected on his television. After the very awkward scene that Erzen was lucky enough to see, he hurried and found the blue-haired boy's room. Because of his expressionless face, he was able to hide the annoyance he was hiding at seeing Liz masturbating while thinking about him. Since then, they have been playing various types of video games. Since he had never done this before, it was quite difficult for him to keep up with her and not break control. But he quickly got used to it. Even after a few games where he lost humiliatingly, he started to fight back. He even won very few times. Suddenly, a sound reached his ears, indicating that the door had been knocked 3 times. Shunto opened it and saw Laura. Laura. Hey, Chisato has arrived, and he brought a lot of alcohol, she said with a bright smile. Shunto. Really? Very animated. Then he turned to look at the brunette who was still watching the television screen in great detail. Hey Erzen. Getting his attention. Have you ever drunk? Erzin? Drunk? Confused. Laura. Alcoholic beverages, she said, still smiling. Erzin. Ah, no, he answered simply. Shunto. Do you want to try some? With a smile. The chestnut tree thought about it for a bit. He knew he was underage and couldn't drink that kind of stuff, but on the other hand, he would stay with the appearance of a 15-year-old boy until someone could kill him. Besides, there is no one to stop him. Erzin. Well, he said something curious. Shunto. Good. He turned off the console and the television, but not before saving the video game. The three of them went down to the living room where Lux and Christina were gathered. But there was someone else, and he looked familiar. The trio of adults noticed the other three and saw them. Chisato. Oh, hello guys, greeting Shunto and Laura until he saw the brown-haired boy Erzin approaching him. You really are a trend all over the world. Chisato. And you didn't change anything, you remember me, right? Erzin. Yes, your name was He tried to remember, he only remembered your appearance. And he was bad at remembering names. You're cute. Smiling victoriously. The brunette's eye twitched, a sign of annoyance. Chisato. My name is Chisato. Chisato, remember that well with a very fake smile. Erzin. Yes, that's it, his smile disappearing. That's when he realized something. In the center of the room there were a lot of bottles of all kinds of alcoholic beverages, metal beer barrels, with their respective hoses coming out of the top. There was also fast food like pizzas, hamburgers, fries, burritos, etc. This last thing made the teenager happy. Erzin. Maybe I can enjoy this, he thought with a small smile. Everyone sat down on the armchairs and they began to pour alcohol into glasses, cups, and jars. Shunto took the hose from the barrel, opened the tap, and began to pour beer into 2 jars and then sealed it. Shunto. Here, offering a jar to the chestnut tree, it's the best place to start smiling. Erzin grabbed the jar and looked at it with curiosity. Laura. Come on, take it, sipping some of her vodka. With some intrigue he drank some of the liquid. When it made contact with his taste buds, he had to make an effort not to spit it out and swallow it. Erzin. It's very, with a disgusted face. Liz. Bitter. Yes, that's how it was at first, going down the stairs while seeing everything that was happening. Christina. You're a little late, don't you think? Liz. Well. I had to do something before looking away. The chestnut, seeing this, realized something. Erzin. How long was he masturbating? He thought somewhat uncomfortably. Liz. Ah, hello Chisato with a lively smile. Chisato. How long, smiling equally. Liz. 1.5 years, I guess, approaching and pouring herself some wine and then sitting next to Erzin. Action that made him more uncomfortable. To try to calm himself, he took a long drink of his beer. Shunto. Wow, calm funny. Laura. I think she's found her taste, haha, just like the blue-haired guy. And he wasn't entirely wrong. But that last sip, Erzin could taste the beer a bit pleasant. Although it was still somewhat bitter. Shunto. Wow, that's adapting. Chisato, hearing that, narrowed his eyes. The adaptation to the taste of beer in Erzin was faster than usual. When I turned to look at him, I no longer saw the chestnut's expression of disgust as he drank from his mug. Chisato. There are still things about him that not even he himself knows yet, he thought, with great interest in what he could discover about the chestnut at this moment. He shook his head a little to clear his mind. For the moment he would enjoy the small reunion with a new member. Christina. Lux, could you, looking at the aforementioned. Lux. Sure, he snapped his fingers and a stereo started playing music. Bro. This caught the brown-haired man's attention even more. I'd heard it before. Or at least that's what I remember. Shunto. Take it, refilling the Erzin jar. Without saying anything, he began to drink. Every time they filled it, he would take it all at once. The others were not far behind. As time passed, they were drinking and eating. Some began to feel dizzy and others had more resistance to alcohol. Chisato. Hey Erzin, how come you're not on the ground? She asked, a little drunk. Everyone saw it and the brown-haired boy acted as if nothing had happened. Something that also confused him, with the amount of beer he drank, he was supposed to be on the floor, sleeping while Shunto painted his face. Erzin. I don't know, he answered simply. Shunto. Ha 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 ha, this guy surprises us more and more. He said while putting his arm around the brown-haired boy's neck as if he were a long-time friend. Laura. Hey. Why you said no, why you had drunk before, cheater. She said, somewhat annoyed and also drunk. Lux. Maybe this will work from a small magic circle. She took out a small bottle with a light brown liquid. Christina. That's it, a little surprised. Lux. Apple liqueur. Or I think that's what it was called, it's the only thing that can get a dragon drunk. Shunto. Wow, man, that's something hasty, don't you think? The time I drank some of that mixed with beer, it put me to sleep in an instant, somewhat worried. Lux. Maybe, but on the other hand, uncapping the barrel, he poured in a little of the liquid, then closed it and shook it to mix it. Erzin. Confused, what are you doing? Lux. Now, drink it. The chestnut tree grabbed his jar and tried to serve himself, but the older chestnut tree stopped him. Lux. Straight from the hose, he said seriously. Erzin. What a serious guy, he thought, then put the hose in his mouth. Christina turned on the tap and the mixture began to filter through the hose until it reached the teenager's mouth. Erzin began to drink the beer. The taste had changed to apple, which pleased him. Shunto, bottom. 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 Laura. F bottom. F bottom. Chisato. Bottom. Bottom. Faux bottom. Everyone started shouting bottom while the brown-haired man drank. This encouraged Erzin even more, who began to suck vigorously. He sucked so hard that not only did he run out of beer, but the barrel also shrank so much that it became like a finished apple. This not only surprised those present, but also livened up the atmosphere even more. Erzin. Taking the hose out of his mouth, it tasted good, somewhat lively, and without effects. Shunto. Dude, you're a monster. You won't even get drunk with that thing. Laura. Why, you are a genius boy, she said with a smile, and drank tequila. Lux was the most out of it. Not even he, who had a monstrous resistance to alcohol, could manage to come away from the amount of apple alcohol he put in the beer. Christina. I think you have competition, looking at her partner with a mocking smile. Lux frowned a little at this. Liz, who hadn't said anything the whole time, was paying attention to what the teenager was doing, something that he completely ignored. Erzin. Do you have more of that? He asked Lux. He saw that I had not yet had any effects from the liquor, so he gave a small smile. Lux. Of course. In fact, the more I add, the more it tastes like apple, she said, wanting to test the strength of the chestnut. He opened another barrel and put in a significantly larger quantity of apple liquor than before. Erzin. Good. He put the hose to his mouth and turned on the tap. He sucked the beer and drank it without breathing. After a few minutes, the barrel was the same as the previous one. Everyone expected him to fall asleep on the floor, but he still wasn't even a little drunk. He didn't even have slightly red cheeks like everyone else had right now. Erzin. Humor with a small smile. Thus, the remaining barrels of beer mixed with apple liqueur were finished, leaving the bottle of the same at just under half full. By this point, everyone was almost completely drunk. The only ones who weren't were Lux and Erzin, who decided to have a drinking competition. Between the two of them, they had finished most of the alcohol. The others could only watch, while they occasionally got hiccups. After a while, Lux was completely drunk and trying to stay conscious. Erzin. Hey, I think we should stop seeing the older brunette who was on the verge of sleep. Lux. And no hiccup. A can was the last thing he could say before falling asleep on the couch. Erzin. I think I'll go to sleep, it's late. He turned to see the others and saw that Shunto and Laura were no longer there. I think they already went ahead. He went up the stairs to his room, brushed his teeth and lay down to sleep. The next morning. The brown-haired boy slowly opened his eyes in the sunlight. Immediately memories of the previous night came to him. He had to admit he had had a bit of fun. Erzin. I think there was some leftover food from last night, he thought. He had planned to finish it so as not to waste it. He heard someone sigh next to him. Following that, he felt his bare chest being caressed. Surprised, he turned to look, lifted the sheet and was left blank when he saw Chisato completely naked, somewhat sweaty and with a white liquid coming out of her crotch. At that moment, other memories came to his mind, leaving him more than shocked. Even though he was completely sober, he had had sex with the brunette. And she could remember that both she and he had enjoyed it like never before. What he remembered made him start to panic. Chisato. You starting to wake up. Erzin. Oh shit. Sweating cold. Chapter 13. Lux, Christina, Laura, Liz and Shunto were having breakfast in the dining room. Everyone had a terrible hangover, especially Lux, who was drinking her 6th cup of coffee. Laura. Hey, where is Chisato? Shunto. I don't know, she's always the first to get up after a night of drinking. Liz remained silent. She had seen Chisato enter Erzin's room. Which made her clench her fists. If she hadn't gotten so drunk she would be with Erzin now. They heard some footsteps and turned to look. It was the brown-haired boy who had a lost look. Christina. Oh, Erzin, you're awake now, is something wrong? She asked, seeing the teenager's worried expression. Erzin. It's nothing, sitting down in his chair and starting to serve himself food. Shunto. Hey, didn't you see Chisato? He asked, seeing him. This question made Erzin tense up and he remembered how she rode him wildly while moaning and screaming his name. Erzin. And no trying to hide his nervousness. Liz noticed this and looked at him accusingly. A few minutes passed, during which Erzin could not get those memories out of his mind. Although one thing he had to admit was that he felt spectacular. Suddenly, slow footsteps were heard. Everyone turned around and saw Chisato, whose legs were very shaky and he could barely walk. Shunto, wow, Chisato, what happened to you? Chisato. And nothing, I think I drank too much and hurt my legs because I was so drunk, a little nervous. Nobody believed that story, especially Liz. Quickly seeing his trembling legs, they realized what was wrong with him. And also who was responsible. There was an awkward silence for a few seconds, which seemed like an eternity. Shunto. And how was it? Smiling mockingly. Chisato. Laura. You know, the sleepover with Erzin, smiling the same way. Everyone started laughing, except Erzin, Chisato and Liz. The latter because he was staring at the black-haired girl. Christina. From the way your legs are, I can assume you enjoyed it. Seeing the woman in a mischievous way. Chisato was very nervous and blushed, she remembered how she had forced Erzin to have sex with her. I couldn't believe she had it with a boy, according to her. Although remembering the size of the chestnut's member, he retracted that thought. She had certainly enjoyed it. Lux. You better sit down, you should rest, something fun. The brunette went to sit next to the brunette, which made him more uncomfortable. Shunto. Oh, I almost forgot taking out a DVD from who knows where. Laura. What is that? Shunto. The song from one of the most watched underworld shows in the past, starring Issei Haidu. Liz. Wait, is that the perverted dragon program? Shunto. Do you want to see it? Erzin looks interested. And he was not wrong, the teenager had heard in the underworld that his biological brother had starred in a children's program, although he had never seen it because the series was no longer broadcast and the one sold was a limited edition. Everyone went to the living room. Erzin helped Chisato walk, he had left her in that state and he felt he owed it to her. Once everyone was ready, Shunto put the DVD in a video player. On the huge television in the living room, the video began to play. Everyone fell silent after watching the video. Shunto trying not to laugh his head off. Lux just watched with a small smile. Chisato looked at him with confusion and wondered if they really let children see this kind of things. Liz, Christina and Laura were bothered most by the lyrics and their breasts were seen. And Erzin, well. He had remained silent, thinking that he really wasn't the hero that everyone in the underworld worshipped and that he was an imposter. A thought that was erased when he remembered that they said the Sekiryuutei was a hopeless pervert. Erzin. Well, if that's what the song is like, I don't want to imagine what the program was like. The four women were more than in disagreement with the brown, especially Liz, Laura and Christina. Shunto. Hahaha, it seems the kids loved it, hahaha. Lux. Competing with the magical girl program of the Mau Leviathan, still smiling. After a while, everyone dispersed. The chestnut helped Chisato get to his room so he could rest. Liz went to her room to think about things involving Erzin, which would leave anyone who read her mind disturbed. The others went to spend time doing different things. While Chisato watched television from her bed, she was lost in her thoughts. Chisato. Apparently Erzin has immunity to the effects of alcohol, I wonder if the same happens with drugs, he thought while changing channels, looking for something interesting to watch. Rias. Akeno, did you manage to find anything? She asked her queen, who was entering through the door of the residence. Akeno. No, there hasn't been any activity these past few days. That makes things very difficult for us, she said somewhat seriously. Since the last time she saw her brother, Rias and the other girls have been individually searching for the younger Haidu. They thought he was resentful of the supernatural. After all, he has only attacked places that have to do with them. They wanted to find him before he attacked places of factions outside the alliance, like the Egyptians or Greeks. Especially for the latter, they would not think twice to launch an attack against Erzin, which would not only create chaos, but would also reveal them to the humans. Rias. And what do you know about the others? Akeno. Irina, Zenobia, Ross, and Kuroka said they'll keep searching. Kaneko, Asia, and Ravel are already on their way here. Rias. I understand, she said in a tired tone. This matter brought down his depression. It still hurt her not to have Issei by her side. And he constantly wondered, what would Issei think of this? Seeing his younger brother being considered a terrorist by almost everyone. Or what would he do with this matter? Unfortunately, she does not have the same reasoning as her deceased fiancé. But I would do my best to calm him down, if possible. The next morning. A brunette and a brunette were boarding a private plane. Outside of this, there were the rest of the group. Shunto. Laura, if you sleep with him I'll feel very hurt, feigning sadness. Laura. Don't say stupid things. She shouted angrily. Christina. Make sure you tell him exactly what to do. Laura. Of course, I'll make sure he completes the mission, well, changing his attitude suddenly. The woman entered the plane and the doors closed. Inside, Erzin looked at the plane with curiosity. The last thing I had to explore was the cockpit and co-pilot's cabin. Upon entering, he was quite surprised, as there was no one there. Erzin? Hey Laura, who's going to pilot the plane if there's no one here? He asked upon noticing her presence. Laura. It has autopilot. Is this your first time on a private plane? Erzin. My first time on a plane, he answered simply. Laura. Oh well, sit wherever you want, you can have food from the minibar for today. But don't overdo it, she said, this last bit more like an order. Erzin. Of course, he said disinterestedly. The woman accompanying him just sighed. Perhaps it would be more complicated for her to make him understand things. Chapter 14. The plane flew through the sky and among the clouds. Inside there was Laura, who had put on music at full volume, and an Erzin who was eating a chocolate while watching his partner dance. She didn't care if he saw her dancing, she was on her plane anyway and she would do whatever she wanted on it. Besides, Erzin would have no proof that he saw her ailer. An alarm sounded inside the plane, causing Laura to stop dancing and turn off the music. Laura. Okay kid, here we get off, grabbing a backpack that was hanging near the cockpit. Erzin. Seeing that they were still in the air, normally you have to land first, right? Looking at her with doubt. Laura. Nope, going to the back. The brown-haired man didn't refute and followed her. He had noticed that there was nothing in the back, which made him curious. Once there, a gate separated them from the rest of the plane. The purple-haired girl pressed a button and another door opened, revealing the outside. Neither of them was affected by the height at which they were. Laura. I suppose you already know what you have to do, right? She said, looking at him. The brown-haired boy nodded. The fall wouldn't affect him in the least. Laura. Well, looking at it in more detail, hey, why don't you have a parachute? She didn't finish speaking, since Erzin jumped without waiting. Shit. She said worriedly, and also jumped with the intention of reaching him. Erzin was falling and had positioned himself so that he would fall faster. Action that was copied by Laura, having the same effect. Asia. She sighed tiredly. Zenobia. Don't you think this is a waste of time? I mean, every time we go out to look for him we just run into those Kains cleaning blood from their durandal. Irina. Rias doesn't want to leave him, she thinks she could make him reconsider. Kaneko. And you don't think it's possible? Irina. No, it's not that, I'm the one here who wants to meet him the most, but with everything he's done, don't you think it was his power that corrupted him? Ross. It's possible. Of all the superhumans, he's the most powerful ever seen. Ravel. If we were to calculate, it would be at the level of a high-class devil. Zenobia. Really? We can't speculate like that. From the main door, Akeno would enter with a small smile. Asia. Akeno-san, did something happen? She asked, noticing that smile. Akeno. No, nothing. I just remembered something I have to do, she said, heading to the elevator to go up a floor. She was upset on her way back. But upon meeting some Kains, she was able to calm down and de-stress by torturing them. Asia. Why do you think she is like this? Zenobia. Who knows? Shrugging. Ross. Hey, haven't you noticed that Rias looks more energetic than usual? Irina. She's been like this since the first news from Erzin. Maybe, because he's Issei-kun's brother, she thinks he's the only one who can still maintain that bond that united them, she said, looking at her. Kaneko. He needs a psychiatrist with a poker face. Laura and Erzin were leaving a moderately large crater. Laura. I'm stupid to think something like that would hurt you. But still, don't do it again, idiot. She yelled at him, annoyed. Erzin. Oh, sure, he said nonchalantly, and could barely hear what he said. By the way, where are we? They had landed in a small forest, so no one could see how the chestnut tree created the crater when it landed on its feet. Erzin. Where we are, by the way? Laura, in the city of Musatafu. Erzin. The ghost town. And why here? Laura. There's someone who needs to do the heavy lifting around here. And who better than the strongest superhuman alive? Smiling at her. Erzin. I'm not superhuman. They arrived at the city and there was absolutely no one there. So the chestnut tree could walk down the street without any problem. Pagaya. So, you know what you have to do, right? I don't want to repeat it again, seriously looking at someone a little shorter than her. Yes, but how long until I go? Pagaya. That's what I don't know yet. That jerk hasn't shown up in days and it's no fun like this. Pouting anyway, you know what to do, just wait for my signal. I'll change your appearance again and it'll be a huge event. Of course. By the way, I've been seeing you more distant lately. Normally I see you watching the news or researching tourist spots and such. Pagaya. Oh, well. It's a secret and it also involves you. Chunji smiling at him. Chunji. Well, I just hope it's not another one of those trips to destroy places that seem to be important. Pagaya. I don't promise you anything with a somewhat suspicious smile. Now go, I'm busy, she said the last part in a curt manner. The boy simply left the room, leaving the light blue-haired girl alone. Pagaya. It will be the last thing you do, smiling maliciously. 2 days later. The plane landed at an airport on a considerably large island. When he stopped on the track, the door opened, revealing a brunette and a brunette eating a chocolate bar. Outside were the other members of the group, except for Liz. Christina. And. How did it go? Laura. Well, I just have to say that seeing Erzin, who was talking to Shunto and Chisato, this boy is a monster. Lux. Because of his strength, right? Laura. Not only that, we were supposed to protect some people from the Kains, since they had to collect valuable objects that had been left there. Christina. Of course, what does that have to do with anything? Confused. Laura. A horde of Category 8 Kains arrived. That kind of thing would be quite difficult even for us, turning a little pale, but with a single blow he annihilated the entire horde and he didn't even try a bit. When he finished telling what happened, he saw the couple who didn't even flinch. Laura. Aren't they going to say anything? Christina. Laura, calm down a bit. Lux. You didn't see the recording of the underworld, it's normal that you were surprised. Laura. Recording. Confused. Christina. Erzin had a fight with a bald man, the fight itself was already causing too much destruction. But with the last blow they landed, they destroyed what used to be the dragon's territory in its entirety, she said this last bit seriously. Lux. And not only that, but they made the whole underworld tremble. Laura. Did they destroy it? Hey, if it's some kind of game, it's not fun. Annoyed. Christina. We can show you the recording if you want, shrugging. Laura. Fine, but it will be later. Now, I want to rest a little, starting to walk to the mansion. Christina. Aren't you staying for a drink? The purple-haired girl stopped dead in her tracks upon hearing that. Laura. Drink. Turning to look at her. Lux. They deposited $6 million into our account. So we plan to celebrate Erzin's first successful mission. The woman's hands trembled a little. She was tired, but she couldn't refuse the invitation. They gave a sigh of defeat and looked away. Laura. I guess I could stay, Shunto still owes me the 6th round, she whispered this with a small smile. While Erzin, Shunto and Chisato were chatting while heading to the mansion. Shunto. And they were all Category 8. Erzin. Yes or so, Boris said. Chisato. Her name is Laura. Seeing him strange, she didn't know why the boy didn't remember the names well. Erzin. Ah, yes that. Shunto. By the way, we're having another meeting today. To celebrate your payment. Erzin. My payment. Oh, for the mission, right. Chisato. That's right. While they were gone, Lux brought more apple liqueur. So, what do you say? She wouldn't say it out loud, but despite the fact that the boy left her with trembling legs, she had really enjoyed having Hex with the brunette. And if they did it again, she would make sure to use a little of her power to keep up with him. Erzin. I guess that would be fine, shrugging. By the way, where is the light? Chisato. Her name is Liz, and she's inside. She's been impatient today. Shunto. I think he wants something you already had, looking flirtatiously at the black-haired girl. Chisato. Shut up, seeing him somewhat annoyed. The chestnut tree just looked at them without understanding what they were referring to. Once inside, they sat on the armchairs next to Liz, who was waiting for them. Christina. Well, we don't have to hold back this time, with a smile. Erzin. What do you mean by contain us? Shunto. You'll know, giving him a jar of beer with apple liqueur. Christina and Lux extended their glasses. The others followed them, including Erzin, because they signaled him to do so. Oh, Erzin, cheers. The next morning. The brown-haired boy opened his eyes with some heaviness. When he adjusted his sight, he was surprised because he was not in his bed, but on the floor of his small living room. That's when he realized 2 other things. They should be the first things he should see, or rather, feel. First. Liz was on top of him, and they were both completely naked. Second, and most importantly, his member felt warm and tight. The pleasant feeling too much. He looked down and opened his eyes wide because his member was inside the blonde's privacy. And not only that, but there was Chisato, using Liz's butt to rest his head. Erzin. Oh damn, panicking, remembering the atrocities the 3 of them did in his room. Chapter 15. 1 month later. At this moment, the night enveloped the city in darkness. A month has passed since Erzin's first mission, and since then he has had more missions, which would be very difficult for any of the team to complete. However, for the chestnut it was too simple. Money was also something that rained down on them more than before, thanks to Erzin himself. But not only did they do that, they also went for what they called targets. These were easier, like powerful mafias, terrorist organizations, corrupt parties and politicians in their entirety, and the newest would be Kain traffickers. The latter were dedicated to capturing and taming Kains with interesting abilities. However, the monsters couldn't be very powerful, so they remained at least level 5 Kains. But that was not something to underestimate because they were sold in large groups, which made them more dangerous. Even supernatural beings bought them or managed them for their territories. But the group of mercenaries destroyed them with ease, as well as the Kains that got out of control. On the other hand, not everything was good. There were also mortars and attacks. And these were on a larger scale. To the point that it destroyed an entire city, this in the country of Russia. This caused a hatred towards the chestnut to increase considerably. There was also talk of the terrorist group to which the same man belonged. Group they called the Devastators. Meanwhile in the supernatural world, the leaders of the allied factions intensified their search for the chestnut tree. They considered asking Office, but since the sealing of the Trihexa, she has not been seen again. Issei's former fiancés are becoming increasingly frustrated at not being able to find him and have even asked the Citri clan for help. But they couldn't because everyone is very busy, especially Sona who was supposed to run her school for low-class devils. Right now, our protagonist was eating alone in the living room. Which I quite enjoyed, since Liz had a mission that would last 2 days. Ever since he had a threesome with her and Chisato, she hasn't left his side. She even asked him to help her train her combat skills, which ended in insinuations and seductions from the blonde. The opposite was true for the green-eyed girl, who clarified that they couldn't do it again, that she was drunk, etc. The brunette understood this, but it didn't matter much to him. However, he felt that such a relationship with her would be awkward. So they left it at just being friends. With the rest of the group, he got along quite well. Of course sometimes they were busy with missions including him. But apart from that, they enjoyed the company of the chestnut tree. Even for Christina he had become something like a younger brother. Erzin? How boring. Almost everyone has missions, and Shunto is recovering from his last mission. What should he do? He asked himself mentally while eating a hamburger prepared by himself. After eating he went to his room and laid down on his bed and then turned on the television with the remote control. He spent his time looking for something to watch until he saw a movie in which a guy traveled through time and his own mother fell in love with him. Erzin? This is weird, he said with a poker face while continuing to watch the movie. Normally this is what I did, watching movies and eating whenever I was bored. He was even frustrated, he had millions of dollars at his disposal and he couldn't spend any of it. This continued all day until Laura arrived from her mission. But she was so tired that she went straight to her room to sleep. Grigory. Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels, stood on the balcony of his office, holding a smoking cigarette with 2 fingers. I was thinking about everything that was happening lately. He had a lot of paperwork on his desk, but he didn't care in the least. Suddenly, the office door opens, revealing a beautiful woman in a formal suit that greatly highlights her stunning body. "Enemu? Azazel?" she asked when she saw that he was on her desk. He smelled the cigarette, so he kept finding it on his balcony. "Enemu? Azazel, what are you doing? You have a lot of documents to sign," she said, only to receive no response. Somewhat annoyed, she approached and saw that he was looking up at the sky. "Enemu? Hey, are you okay?" "Azazel? Yes, I'm fine," he said without looking at her. The woman did not believe this and she saw it more seriously. "Enemu? You're thinking about the Sekiryuutei's brother, aren't you?" "Azazel? Am I really that easy to read?" he asked amusedly. "Enemu? After a lifetime of working with you, one knows how things are with one's colleagues." "Azazel? You know, somehow I think I should have brought him with us." "Enemu? We were in crisis. Not even Michael or Gabriel could do it, even though they insisted on keeping him," she said, recalling that the meeting they'd had to decide the baby's future had ended in a heated argument. "Azazel? Yes, I remember. Even Gabriel was almost upset when it was decided to leave him in an orphanage." "Enemu? Do you think he knows what happened that day?" "Azazel? It's the safest bet. And if not, then someone must be behind this," he said, turning around and walking back to his desk. The goat followed him and stood in front of him. "Azazel? If I had asked you to take care of him, would you have done it?" "Enemu? I'm not much of an interactor with children. Maybe I would have spoiled them," he said simply. "Azazel? I see I've been investigating more about the boy. I found videos in which he saved people and performed feats that normal humans couldn't do before," he said, then created a holographic screen that showed a recording in which he fought with a very muscular monster. Enemu was amazed by the agility, speed and strength that the brunette showed in the recording. "Enemu? What is the recording being watched?" "Azazel? From a little over a year and a half ago, undoing the holographic screen seems to be a superhuman who is constantly growing in his abilities." "Enemu? How do you know that?" "Azazel? There are more recordings in which he is seen defeating stronger monsters with greater ease, to the point that he would kill them in one hit, he said, while bringing the cigarette to his mouth to inhale a little and blow out smoke. Enemu? A blow? Azazel? I have a theory as to why he's so strong. But that's all it is. Enemu? What theory? He asked with great interest. Azazel? Have you ever heard of the limiter? In the laboratory, a light blue-haired girl was looking at a photo. She was smaller, along with a younger brown-haired boy, a blonde with blue eyes and a white-haired boy with purple eyes. Pagaya. I wonder what would have happened if they hadn't saved Erzin too. What am I talking about? They would be alive, that would have happened. After that, he went to one of the tables that were there, and from it he lifted a test tube that had traces of having had a red liquid inside. Pagaya. The other one must disappear. And I already have an idea of how he'll do it, smiling. The next day. The whole group of mercenaries was having lunch in the living room while watching television. Some had just arrived, so they put in more than the others. Tisato was not among them because she had to continue with her facade as a normal citizen. Erzin. Liz, could you stop touching my butt? He said uncomfortably. Unlike Chisato, Liz kept groping and seducing the brunette. Sometimes they did have hex, but that was all it was. Sometimes. I didn't complain because apart from being a nymphomaniac, she was really a nice person. Liz. Oh, calm down, it's not like he's going to disappear, right? She said while squeezing the teenager's butt, which made him even more uncomfortable. Christina. Liz, don't bother Erzin, okay? She said with some seriousness. Lux. Leaving Liz's ecstasy aside, we have a goal, she said, drawing everyone's attention, even that of Luz, who stopped groping the brunette. Shunto. And what is it? Christina. On an island. They take superhuman youths about Erzin's age to die there. The chestnut tree paid close attention to this, remembering something that happened to him years ago. Laura. How? Lux. Like Christina said, they take superhuman young people to that island. Somehow they make them kill each other, she said seriously. Liz. If it's on an island, then we'll go on the boat then. Erzin. Do you have a boat? Laura. Yes, I didn't tell you. The brown-haired man shook his head. Christina. Whatever. We'll go out tonight. So pack some clothes or whatever you need, she said, then stood up and headed to the kitchen with her already empty cup. He passed behind Erzin, which he took advantage of to caress his head, ruffling his hair even more than it already was. The chestnut tree was surprised by this, which Lux noticed. Lux. He cares for you, he said with a small smile. Erzin. Why? I don't think I did anything to make him be like this with me, he said confused. Lux. She told me she had a younger brother. He died before I met her. I guess you remind her of him. Erzin. Oh, was the only thing he could say at this. Lux. Well, listen up and pack what you need. Maybe we'll make a stop before coming back here, he said, getting up and leaving. Chapter 16. The sun was setting, which made the sky turn orange momentarily. But we stop at another scene. More specifically, the one that shows how a ship that looked more like a luxury cruise ship was sailing through the most. Inside there were only 6 important people. There were also workers taking care of the cruise ship's functions. And you might be wondering, why are there workers if the owners were criminals? Well, obviously it would be because of the pay. Which was much higher than what public cruises offered. They had also made them promise not to tell anyone about their location. And they had been made more severe by Erzin's presence. Speaking of the chestnut tree, the first time they saw it they were scared shitless. Some literally. But they had explained their situation to them, even he himself clarified some things. This made the workers calm down and see it differently. But let's move on to the present. Right now Erzin was lying on a bed in a room that had been assigned to him. Since the ship was rather large, when he went to get something to eat and returned, he had lost the location of his room. Christina helped him find it again. That's why I avoided going out a lot. He had also suggested to Shunto to play some video games, since he had brought his console and his room was next to his. But it was not possible because he wanted to spend time with Laura. So he decided to stay lying in his bed. Erzin. At least the workers won't try to poison me again. He remembered how some of what they had served him tasted strange. So he had Christina ask them if they had put anything in the food. And since they can't lie to her, it was confirmed that the food was poisoned. Of course, this was before they explained what was happening. The good thing is that Erzin was invulnerable to many things. He closed his eyes, thinking about what he could do. But suddenly, the door of the room swung open, showing Liz that she had a smile. Liz. Are you masturbating? She said in an excited tone. Erzin. What? Liz. No, sorry if you were doing it, it would take you a long time to finish, right? Erzin. What do you want? He asked with a poker face. Liz. I just came to see if you were okay. I mean, you were poisoned. And while kissing can't kill you, it should at least give you a stomachache. Erzin? Oh. Nothing happened to me actually. Liz? I see. Gosh, so even poison can't do anything to you. What else are you immune to? Erzin? I don't know, I've never tried. Liz? Anyway, what are you planning to do? Erzin? Liz? Oh, come on, we're on a boat that only the richest people in the world would own, and you don't want to do anything. Erzin? Well, maybe I would have made plans if they had told me they had a ship. Liz? Yes, I think I forgot that fact, scratching the back of her neck, not ashamed, but anyway, does anything come to mind? The brown-haired man thought about it for a bit and opened his mouth to speak. Liz? Other than eating. Crossing her arms. The teenager closed his mouth again and remained thoughtful. A few seconds later, it was finally decided. Erzin? Well, seeing Liz. On a wooded hill somewhat far from the city of Musatafu, a certain black-haired man with white locks was climbing this. Sometimes Kaguya let him go out to see the world, and on one of those outings he met a very nice girl. After a few minutes, the so-called Chunji had reached its destination. A small cabin at the top of the mountain, which was camouflaged by some trees. Standing at the door, he knocked on it 3 times with his bent fingers. This time controlling his strength well. He waited a few seconds, and the door opened, showing the person he wanted to see. Chunji, what a surprise, she said, seeming not as surprised as she said. Chunji, come on, don't pretend, Rita. I'm the only one who knows about this place after all. Rita? That's true. Come on, come in, she said, stepping aside to let the boy in. In doing so, the girl closed the door. Rita? It's a good thing that this time you didn't destroy my door. Chunji? Yeah, well, scratching his neck in embarrassment, I'm sorry about that. Rita? Never mind. Just tell me how it went, she said, sitting down on a single sofa. Chunji? Oh, well. I didn't really do much. Rita? Doesn't that Kaguya help you? Arching an eyebrow. Chunji? At first, yes. But lately, she's been very distant and busy. I didn't see her all day today, which is why I came here. To be honest, I have more fun when I'm with you. Rita? I see, getting a little serious, you must be careful from now on. Chunji? Rita? If I had to guess, she must be planning something. Chunji? Really? He put his hand on his chin and thought about it for a bit. Rita? Why don't you come live with me? She asked with a small smile. Chunji? I'd like to. But I can't. She was the only one who helped me when I lost my memory. It wouldn't be a good way to repay her. Rita? I understand, but if you change your mind, you know you're welcome. Chunji? Yes. Thanks for that, he said, smiling. Rita just nodded, stood up and went to her kitchen. Chunji, knowing what he would do, just sat and waited. Minutes later. Rita came back with a tray with 2 cups of tea on it and a few biscuits on the side. They approached the small table between 2 single sofas. On one of them was Chunji. The purple-haired girl sat on the other couch and grabbed a cup along with a cookie. Chunji imitated this action, and they continued with that routine they did when they were both together. Rita? And tell me, did that girl already send you on another trip? She said, this getting a little serious. The boy took a sip of his tea and looked at her calmly. Chunji? Not lately. And I hope not. At first I didn't mind, but as time went on I started to feel strange. Rita? How exactly? Chunji? When I finished and looked around, I could see how people looked at me with great fear. I can't get those expressions out of my mind, and somehow I felt bad, he said somewhat dejectedly. The girl watched him unfazed. But inside she felt a little bad for her friend. She had been through very cruel things before. Being a victim of people who, unlike the boy in front of you, did know what they were doing. And I knew that it was very confusing for him because he didn't know how to differentiate between what was good and what wasn't. Now that she noticed him well, he was now much more expressive than when she knew him. Rita? It's your conscience. Chunji? Rita? You can't get that out of your mind because deep down you know what you're doing is wrong. And it's your conscience that makes you feel that way when you remember it, she said, smiling. What was explained left the white-haired man thoughtful. Chunji? But it's also something else. I didn't feel right when Kaguya looked like I was a bit of a mess, he said with his head down. Rita? So you feel it is not right to take the appearance of Erzin to cause destruction, she said, raising a finger. She explained everything as if she were a teacher. Chunji? Do you know him? She asked upon hearing her friend refer to him by name in that tone. Rita? You could say that. He was another child from the experiment I told you about, she said, shrugging her shoulders and taking a sip of her tea. The teenager looked at her with his eyes slightly wider in surprise. Chunji? I see. I don't really know him, I only know his appearance. But Kagaya told me that it was his fault that her brothers died. He remembered the conversation they had that time when he asked her why she blamed Erzen for things he hadn't done. Rita. If she did all this just for revenge, then that girl has problems, she thought seriously. He had met Erzen when he was a little boy. He remembered how shy he was when interacting with other children. As if he had never spoken to anyone before. He wondered how she was handling the situation. I was hoping he had someone to help him. Rita. Do you think we should talk about something else? She said, hoping to change the subject. The boy nodded as a smile formed on his face. Surzich. So you're saying he broke his limiter? He asked seriously to Azazel, who had appeared in his office. Grafiya, who was next to him, had also heard the explanation from the leader of the Fallen. Azazel. As impossible as it sounds, he said while sitting in front of the Reteed's writing. Surzich. Gosh, everything I've heard from that kid is bad. The growth limit was supposed to be impossible to break. How could he have done it? Rubbing his temple with his fingers. Azazel. I'd like to know that too. But you've become the first and only human in this world who was able to break that limitation, he said, finally sighing. Surzich. This will make things even more complicated. Grafiya. Why does Surzich-sama say that? She asked doubtfully. I couldn't understand what that limiter was that they were talking about. Despite my age, I had never heard that term. Azazel. Refers to the fact that since his limiter is broken, he will no longer have any type of limitation to increase his abilities exponentially. Surzich. The growth he can achieve is infinite. He has the potential to become the most powerful existence, surpassing even Great Red. He said this as a chill ran down his spine. Although she didn't show it, Grafiya was quite surprised. If this were made public, there would be a huge uproar. Now there was another reason to find him. If what they said was true, then they would have to do everything possible to persuade him to do something crazy. The next morning, a ship could be seen approaching a rather large island. At the front of the ship was the entire team, who watched as they approached their target. Erzen. Can't they see us coming? Christina. We hid the ship with light magic. It would be invisible to human eyes. Erzen. Oh, well, he said nonchalantly. Lux. They'll most likely have a very strong security detail guarding the grounds. It'd be best to come up with a plan to avoid causing so much damage, she said seriously. Christina. True. They might even have Kayans as a contingency plan in case that team were to fail. Shunto. In that case, Erzen could take care of that while we go in to check the place. Lux. Someone else must do it. Some may be hiding, they may be elusive. Christina. In that case, Laura being able to detect enemies from a distance would be the best option. Lux. And Liz will guide us to where the boys are if there are any left alive. Everyone nodded at this. Even Liz, although she didn't like the idea of being separated from the brunette. The teenager just listened to what they were saying. He was curious about what they had in store for him on that island. Meanwhile, somewhere else. More specifically in an office, a man sitting at a desk was looking through a computer at what appeared to be a beast that was over 3 meters tall and was covered by a cloak. Still, you could tell he was immobilized by the child's movement in him. The man turned his chair around and saw through the window behind him how the sun rose and lit up the sky. I hope it helps. That jerk said he gets stronger with anger. I want to see what you do about this. Pagaya. Chapter 17. 4:22 p.m. It was a normal afternoon for the whole world. Everyone was doing what they had planned to do, following their routine normally. Even the monsters, which could appear at any moment, had not appeared. And if they did, they were detained and subdued by the anti-Cajun teams. So this day seemed to be promising. For everyone except a certain group. On an island far from any trace of civilization, there was a group of mercenaries who had chosen this as their target. 2 of them had stayed outside keeping watch, while the remaining 4 had gone in to investigate. The place looked old and abandoned. The walls and ceiling showed clear signs of deterioration. The humidity of the environment was also quite noticeable. It's strange this place shouldn't look this old. Shunto broke the silence. Right, hey, didn't you go to the wrong island? Her blonde companion asked doubtfully. Lux and Christina didn't respond and looked at each other. According to the information, that place should still have superhuman children residing there. I have a bad feeling, Lux said, becoming alert. As if those words were a signal, his companions raised their guard as well. They continued on their way, prepared for anything. After a few minutes, the group had arrived at a fairly large room that was completely empty. Except for the dirt in the environment. If it weren't for that, the whole place would be pure white. What is this? Asked Shunto, looking around. Christina approached a wall and touched it. He quickly felt the wetness, but he didn't care. What are you doing? Asked Liz, looking at her. Maybe there's something here, she said, concentrating on what she was doing. The others looked at her strangely, except for Lux who knew what her partner was doing. After a few seconds, the white-haired girl saw a small section, almost imperceptible to anyone. Without hesitation he pushed it away and instantly a part of the wall next to him opened, revealing stairs leading to an underground place. They all looked at each other, somewhat doubtful of what they saw. Christina nodded and started down the stairs. The others, with no other option, followed her. Everything looked dark, they could barely see where they were going down. The only one who could see perfectly was Liz, whose eyes shone in the dark. "Liz, do you see anything striking?" asked Lux. Everyone was behind her, since at a certain point they decided that she would guide them. "Only we are almost at the end," he said without taking his eyes off the road, noticing a dirty door. It didn't take long for them to be in front of the door and the blonde stopped them. "There are no more stairs," he said, and everyone stopped going down. Without thinking, he grabbed the knob, turned it, and pushed the door. Because the hinges were rusted, they creaked loudly from the sudden movement. It was when they could see a little better because it was brighter. The first thing they saw was a room that was divided by 3 corridors. One in front and the other 2 on the sides of the room. "Let's split up. Shunto goes to the one on the right, Liz to the one on the left, and Lux will go with me to the one in front," Christina said, and the 3 nodded. "Don't hesitate to shout if you see something." Without further ado, they did what was said and split up. Lux and Christina headed down the front hallway without stopping. They could see that there was no deviation in the corridor, just a door at the end. Unconsciously Christina clenched her fists and they shone a pure white color due to the magical power in them. Lux just remained alert to every little detail of the place. When they reached the door, Lux carefully turned the knob and pushed the door open, trying to minimize the noise as much as possible. Now seeing completely inside, they recognized what was there instantly. The room was a monitoring room. They both entered and could see more things, such as chairs, keyboards, and of course, monitors attached to the wall. "There must be a way to turn this on," Christina said, looking closely at the screens and the keyboard. "Lux, can you help me with this? If I do that, the screens are likely to explode." "It seems to be pre-Earth of change technology," he said, analyzing the monitors. "They generally use less energy because they're simple to operate. Try to contain yourself then," he said simply. Lux, seeing this, just sighed, started looking for some cable. When he found it, he touched the metal connectors with his fingers and generated small green rays at the tips. Doing that continuously, it didn't take long for the screens to light up. Although some of them couldn't do it, they didn't care. With Liz. The blonde was walking down the hallway that had been assigned to her. He had taken out his dagger as a precaution in case something happened, since he noticed something strange. "Why is this hallway so long?" he whispered with a look of surprise. "I didn't understand the need to make such long corridors. It's not like that adds a nice touch to the place. What's more, it makes it annoying." He continued walking with that doubt in his mind until. Ugh. He quickly covered his nose with a look that expressed the disgust he felt. "I had noticed a nauseating smell in a certain part of the corridor. What is this? This smell is horrible," he thought, stopping his walking. He felt like vomiting right there, but that aside from the smell, would have only made him do it more. So plucking up his courage, he gripped his dagger tighter and continued walking. This time faster, since he wanted to get out of there faster. In a short time I was in front of a metal door that was half open. Hesitating a little he pushed it, making the hinges rattle loudly. He made his senses as sharp as possible for some kind of sneak attack. Upon entering, her eyes opened wide, demonstrating the horror and disgust that invaded her. Ugh. He couldn't hold it in any longer and started vomiting to the side. Shunto. It didn't take long for the blue-haired boy to get where he had to go. Although he could notice some broken and damaged cameras, some weapons that had an automatic firing mechanism, as well as motion sensors. "How nice, huh?" he said sarcastically. "I didn't understand why so much preparation, it's not like they were protecting Cajuns, right?" He stopped paying attention to the devices and turned to the door. It was made of wood, very normal for a place like that. Without further ado, with a smile he kicked it open, not caring about the noise it made. All he saw was a very large room with a bunch of destroyed cots, along with some toys and other things thrown around. He stared at the place carefully, analyzing it carefully. His smile had disappeared and he tightened his grip on his swords. What a way to remember bad times, he thought, starting to walk and explore the room. If I had to calculate, at least 120 to 140 people would fit in here. At one point, he saw a very worn giraffe-shaped stuffed animal. His eyes widened and he quickly approached. He bent down, laid his swords aside and took it. His hands were stained with the dirt from the doll. He couldn't help but make a sad face. If the place already made him remember things he didn't want to remember, this doll made his emotions more complicated. "Maria," he whispered as he squeezed the doll. Images of the girl he was supposed to protect quickly came to him. So this is where you ended up, he thought, as he looked down. He didn't know what to think or do now, for a moment he forgot why he went to that place. The memory of how his protege was taken away quickly flashed through his mind, over and over again. As if his conscience were rubbing in his face the worst mistake he had ever made. With Liz. This how horrible, he whispered, since his voice was too weak and he had no other words to describe what he saw. After vomiting and cleaning himself, he got a better look at what was there. Dried blood everywhere, rotting organs scattered all over the place, and decomposed corpses that, given their condition, did not have a peaceful death, so to speak. But what made it worse was that all the corpses were small, as if they had been children before. He couldn't watch anymore, so he turned around with the intention of leaving. But suddenly, red lights in the corners of the room turned on, and a loud emergency alarm began to sound. The blonde couldn't help but turn around again, somewhat upset and gripping her dagger. 3 hatches in the wall in front of her opened, revealing nothing but darkness. That is, until a hand with claws that one could easily estimate to be 30 centimeters long poked out. The next thing I saw was a horrible face, worthy of a monster. White eyes, gray skin, no nose and fangs that could easily pierce through steel. His body came to light, showing the various tumors that grew everywhere. He had a thin build, like that of a person suffering from malnutrition. From the other gates, creatures equally or more horrible than the first one that came out began to make themselves known. From small to large, from thin to muscular and fat. The monsters differed, but if Liz was sure of one thing, it was that there were many of them. She could handle a few alone, but would eventually be killed by either exhaustion, the number of monsters and the little space she had. Liz watched these cautiously, ready to defend herself. But there was something strange. Why don't they attack? She asked herself mentally, looking confused. The monsters seemed stunned and disoriented at this moment. This is of course because they had been put in a kind of hibernation state for years, and the fact that they had not been awakened for a long time made them feel confused. Seeing this as an opportunity, the blonde slowly backed away. She knew that at some point they would attack and that she would have to fight. But at least she would warn the others so they could help her. However, what he didn't count on was that one of them would recover before the others. The plump monster with abnormally large fists noticed their presence. Seeing the girl in front of him, he quickly set his sights on her. He started advancing towards her, his fists imitating his feet as they reached the ground. He was getting closer and closer with the purest intentions of crushing her with his fists, which made Liz take action. With great force, he threw his dagger towards the monster's head. The speed of the weapon was such that he did not have even a second to react. The dagger had gone through his head like butter and had stuck into the wall, next to the head of the monster with tumors on its face. The monster, already dead, fell to the ground with a loud noise. This caught the attention of the other monsters, who, seeing one of them dead, realized Liz's presence. She, noticing this, extended her hand to where her dagger was stuck. As if it were a magnet, the weapon flew back to the hand of its owner, who barely had it and started running back down the hallway. "Please. Shuntuo." Christina's voice was heard all over the place. The monsters gave different roars and began to follow the blonde with the sole idea of killing her. Shit. That was what I was thinking while running. With Christina and Lux. A few minutes before. The couple watched intently at the screens, which only transmitted static. This didn't surprise them, they somehow knew something like this would happen. "Well, at least we know they were," Christina joked with a blank look. "Most likely the monitoring equipment has failed," Lux said without any visible expression. "Well, it seems like it's been a long time. The place itself proves it." The white-haired woman looked around, reaffirming what she'd said. "Let's go." When Lux was about to stop providing power, an image appeared on 2 monitors. One showed the shed they came down from, and another showed a relatively large room. On the second monitor, you could see some fallen angels bringing some children into the room. These looked very battered and tired. Their clothes were very worn and they looked malnourished. When everyone was inside, they closed the door. As soon as that happened, the atmosphere turned red and some doors opened on one of the walls. The children looked very fearful, some even hugged each other. In a way of comforting themselves. From the 3 gates, 3 monsters came out. Audio was not necessary to know how the children screamed in terror, those closest to the door ran to it and hit them, begging to be taken out of there. The monsters, without waiting, rushed towards the children and without any mercy, began to massacre them in different ways. No one could save themselves, and none of the monsters could hold back. The blood even splashed onto the camera, preventing further viewing. On the first monitor, you could see some older children entering adolescence. There seemed to be 30 to 50 of them. They looked nervous and somewhat fearful. Unlike the children, these looked healthier, but they still looked bad. Following that, a few fallen angels appeared. There weren't many, only 5 of them came in, and they seemed pretty strong. They seemed to exchange words before they created spears of light and began to attack them. The boys immediately fought back, using superhuman abilities. And although they remained for a while, little by little the fallen angels overcame them, to the point where a massacre took place. This time, you could see until the last second of the recording how they only left the one who could hold out the longest and took him away. Lux and Christina remained silent when they saw all this. Their eyes were wide open, shocked by what they saw. They were used to seeing blood, yes. However, they never wanted to see children being massacred and killed in horrible ways. Christina even suppressed the urge to cover her mouth when she saw the recordings. While Lux changed his expression to one of fury and clenched his fists. Even in the past, before the age of change, the fallen angels, demons and other races did things like this. They kidnapped humans to make them their slaves. And it wasn't even for their nobility, they were just having fun with them in different ways. And why all this? Because they were considered insignificant. I knew there were those who did nothing, but they still had that thought. Even their leaders, although they were determined to protect humans, deep down they considered them equal. Because if not, why didn't they show themselves? All their actions, all their wars and conflicts that they have between them, the only thing they have done is affect humanity. And when a human discovered them for one of those reasons, they simply erased their memory or killed them. For them it was so easy, after all for them humans were simple. Lux hated them, she definitely did. He could go on and on about throwing shit at other races, but instead he decided to put a hand on his partner's shoulder. She seemed to react to that and lowered her head. What was the need to do that to them? He couldn't help but ask. I really didn't know how to feel about it. I had had encounters with the fallen before, but I had never developed any grudges towards them like I had with the demons. At most I considered them annoying. But seeing those images, no doubt a feeling of repulsion grew within her towards them. He could see the fun on the faces of those fallen angels as they killed those kids. I couldn't understand how something like that would amuse them. He met many crazy people who killed for fun, but he never managed to understand their reasoning. So she just got rid of them. Mental problems. Screw that. He considered that those people who simply take lives because they did not deserve their own. None, they were always like that, Lux answered seriously. He decided not to continue with this and stopped providing energy. The monitors went off and they were both ready to leave. This would leave them thinking for a long time. Just as they were about to leave the room, some kind of alarm started to sound. It wasn't where they were, but it did get there. This fact alarmed them and they immediately prepared for anything. And more things work here, said Lux, as small sparks of electricity began to sprout from his body. Damn it. Christina cursed as her hands began to radiate magical power. Please. Shuntuo. She shouted at the top of her lungs so that both could hear her. After that, they both hurried out of the room and with quick steps began to walk down the hallway. Apart from the alarm, little by little they began to hear roars of different kinds. This whole situation only worried the couple more and more. When they arrived at the living room, a few seconds later Liz came out of the hallway that touched her. And followed by her, Shunto also appeared, only wrapped in his belt he was carrying a dirty stuffed giraffe. Damn, you can't just be depressed in peace anymore, said the blue-haired man with annoyance while he prepared his swords. Little by little his veins began to glow a blue color until they reached his hands, and along with them the marks of his swords also began to shine. You can do it later, said the brunette before seeing the blonde. What did you do? He asked her quickly. Me? She cried indignantly, while turning her gaze to the hallway. I didn't do anything. That bucking alarm started going off, and suddenly those monsters came out. She prepared her dagger just in case. The group saw a large number of Cajuns approaching them. They knew this wouldn't be easy, especially because of the limited space and the number of monsters that were going to attack them. The white-haired woman pressed a button on an intercom in her ear. Laura, what's the situation up there? She asked, extending her hand toward the monsters. A magic circle appeared on it, without any markings or emblems. Well, apparently, for a moment a huge horde of monsters came out of nowhere to attack us. But we'll take care of that. Laura's voice sounded a little dazed. Okay, then we need you to come, there are many monsters here. While he was saying that, a monster was already in front of him. But Shunto beheaded him with a throw of his sword. Then let's go. Oh no. What? I think we need to deal with one more problem here. What's the problem? He shouted as he launched a blast of magical energy to disintegrate a monster's head. With Laura and Erzin. The woman and the teenager saw how a lot of magic circles appeared in the sky, while from these many fallen angels came out of them. It seems the crows are always nosy, Laura spoke through the intercom. Meanwhile, Erzin just cleaned his ear in boredom. Chapter 18. With Laura and Erzin, some time ago. The duo stood at the entrance of the large structure watching out for any enemy who tried to enter. Laura was focused on her ability to detect enemies. You could tell that this island was abandoned a long time ago by the state of the building. There could be monsters spread all over the island. While his partner, well. The brown-haired boy yawned. If he had known it would be so boring, he would have been better off staying on the boat. At first, this mission caught his attention because it reminded him of something that had happened to him with the demons when he was little. But the place was abandoned and it seemed that no one lived on the island. He saw Christina out of the corner of his eye and noticed that she was also looking at him. Seeing you so calm is disturbing, but understandable. He broke the silence, his ability was already active enough to hold a conversation. I'm more like bored, the boy replied disinterestedly. Well, I won't deny it, I guess you'd rather have gone in with them, right? The purple-haired girl asked with a smile. And he was right, I wanted to know what I could find inside. Maybe was the only thing, he replied. After that they were silent once again. It wasn't uncomfortable, at least for Erzin. Laura knew that her partner was a man of few words and very absent. In addition to having no expression most of the time. He always looked bored and did anything to pass the time. Hey, there wasn't much time to ask you, but how are you handling your incrimination? Having to deal with the hatred of practically two worlds must be tough. None of the group had dared to ask about that topic because they thought it would be inappropriate. But Laura was very curious, she couldn't imagine herself being hated by literally everyone for things she never did. I hadn't known him for long, but I knew the guy wasn't bad. Otherwise, with its strength it could cause a real catastrophe. And he had reasons to think so, since he saw with his own eyes how with a tiny fraction of his strength, he was able to wipe out an entire horde of monsters. The brown-haired man, upon hearing the question, took a few seconds to answer. It's annoying, I'm usually not interested in what people think of me, but… Laura looked at him with doubt. Was this kind of contempt too much for him? Perhaps even for the strongest person, being considered scum by everyone must be something that affects them. I miss going to Doña Pilo's stand, he said a little dejectedly. Of course, food was no longer a problem for him and everything was extremely delicious. But that lady's cooking was a delight, no doubt. However, since he almost never had any money, he could rarely afford to go to his post. It even took years to be able to find the time to go. He met her while he was still in his training period, so he gave more priority to that. But now that he had a lot of money, he considered it a waste not to be able to go and buy him one of those enchiladas that he liked quite a lot. Laura was speechless when she heard that. They, along with the Cajuns, were considered public enemies of everyone in the world. There was no one who did not know him as a criminal and the greatest terrorist of the time. Knowing that, the only thing I thought about it was that I couldn't go to someone's food stand. That lady made very delicious food. I wonder if she's okay, he said, looking up at the sky with a half-worried expression. I wanted to go buy food, but I didn't know exactly where I should go, since the island I was now living on was in the middle of nowhere. I could run through the water looking for a way back to Tokyo, but if I saw him coming it would be a problem. But if he arrived and it was gone, he would undoubtedly be disappointed. Laura didn't know what to say about it. Seriously, that was the only thing you were worried about? After racking his brains trying to understand, he could only sigh. Sometimes I forget that your way of thinking is too simple, he said with resignation. In this way, according to her, it would be very unlikely that Erzin would be a threat to the world. It was even hard to believe that someone like that was such a powerful force. You asked, a teenager shrugged. Well, changing the subject, do you have any idea who could be doing this? I mean, causing the disasters you're supposedly doing. Erzin's expression darkened a little. He knew very well who did it and why. However, how he did it was something I couldn't understand. Yes, I know, he answered, apparently normal. This response Laura did not expect. I was expecting I don't know who it could be, or I suspect someone and things like that. But that he knew it directly was disconcerting. He wanted to ask more. But he noticed the slight shadow that covered the brunette's monotonous expression. I better not push him any further, he thought. Now he felt he was going too far with the questions. Well, she wouldn't like to be asked questions that bring back bad memories either. Unless these no longer affect you and you have left them in the past. Besides, if he wanted her to answer those kinds of questions, he would have to earn her trust. Well, how did you get to the underworld? That was another question I had. I didn't know how someone outside of magic could get to a place that can only be reached with magic. The brunette's face lit up again as before and he brought his hand to his chin, remembering. Well, I was in an alley after killing a Cajun, suddenly one of those annoying circles appeared on my feet. And so I explained what happened as simply as possible, not wanting to complicate things in that. Laura just remained silent at that. I was expecting a more detailed explanation, like the circle emblems, if he had encountered it before or after. He even called the magic circles annoying. However, at this point he thought it was pointless. And apparently, he wasn't interested in asking her any questions about her. Just when he thought the rest of the stakeout would be an awkward silence, something came to mind. "Hey, what happened in Dragon Territory? You know, with that bold guy in a cape?" he asked with great curiosity. That along with how she became so strong was one of the biggest questions she and her group had. But no one asked him how he became strong, because it must be something a person should keep secret. Not everyone should know, because if they did everything would be chaos. But their fight with that guy wasn't such a secret, at least for them. "Old guy with a cape?" he asked confused, until his mind clicked. "Oh, Santiana. No, I think it was Saida something." Saitama. He raised a finger remembering the name. So many things have happened that he didn't have time to think about it. "Saitama? Is that his name?" Laura was surprised. As far as I understood, Saitama was the name of a town in Japan. Who would name their child after a town? That was weird. Yes, he was very strong. He smiled a little as he remembered the fight. I really wish it had lasted longer. But he seemed in a hurry. Besides, it wasn't that bad, since although it wasn't that satisfying, the fight had somewhat satisfied his desire to find someone who would give him a fight. He was in a good mood the days after that, but Kaguya framing him ruined everything. "I realize from the recording," he said, remembering what Christina had shown him, "and you beat him." The brunette shook his head, confusing the woman even more. "I think I did some damage with my last blow, but the truth is neither of us was serious." He felt the bald man's attacks at the time, but he noticed that he was holding back. He couldn't complain since he did it too. The most remarkable thing was that his last blow almost broke his arm. But that he realized that the hero was stronger than him. Something? Was it really that strong? She asked somewhat incredulously. For someone with such great strength as the chestnut to say something like that about another person, it must be true, right? Erzin's strength was ridiculously enormous in itself. And to say that with such force he did some damage. He was practically saying that guy was stronger than him. "Yes, a lot," he replied, not paying much attention to her reactions. The woman looked at him with a little disbelief. But the fact that he himself confessed it along with what he saw on the recording, I could do nothing but believe him. It was very difficult for him to accept that there was another person who was equal to or stronger than this boy. "And how did you find it? Do you know where it is?" If that guy was so strong and went unnoticed by everyone, then he must not want anyone to know about him. And if Erzin managed to find him, then it would make sense why they fought. He must have wanted to get rid of Erzin so he wouldn't tell anyone where. He and his friends were looking for a girl. I don't remember her name. He remembered the talk he had with them, but he said they were traveling to other worlds to find her. Laura looked at the brunette as if he had grown a hick on his face like an elephant. Did they travel to other worlds? He thought doubtfully. There were worlds apart from the human one, and they were the realms in which supernatural beings dwelt. But nowhere was another person seen apart from Erzin who had so much power. If so, everyone would be looking for him for that very reason, either to kill him or to recruit him. Unless you are literally not from this world. What were your friends like? They were a pink-haired girl with anger issues, a kind girl with raccoon ears I think, and a cyborg. She named them by their most striking features. He didn't remember their names, and if he tried to remember, it would take him some time. The purple-haired girl thought about the descriptions. The first one was something normal, there were people like that. The second could be a yokai, after all that race had animal features. But the last one was something very unusual. Cyborgs were not yet possible to create. Not even in the supernatural world were scientists able to make a cyborg or anything like that. It's very unusual, and after their fight, what did they do? They went to look for the girl, but they couldn't make it. So they went through some kind of portal to another world. He shrugged. They wanted to come here, but I don't know what the problem was that they couldn't. That was all he needed to draw his conclusion. So they traveled between universes? He wondered, analyzing Erzin's words once again. Everything pointed to yes. Well, that was very surprising. I didn't know anyone other than the dragon god of dreams who could do that. Maybe the dragon goddess of infinity, but I wasn't sure. He looked up at the sky and sighed. He needed to process what they were saying to him. I didn't believe everything he told me, but I couldn't feel any lies either. Erzin looked at her for a few seconds before leaning against the wall and sitting on the floor. They both fell silent again. Laura analyzing what was told over and over again. And Erzin blanked his mind and stared into space with an idiot's face. Yes, up to that point I was bored. The duo stayed like that for a few minutes until they felt a small tremor. Or rather Laura, since the teenager was still in a trance. The purple-haired girl concentrated again to detect enemies. Not even seconds passed before his eyes widened in alarm and he braced himself. His body began to radiate a violet aura while his eyes turned the same color. Her hair also seemed to shine a little at that. Damn, I got too distracted. He closed his eyes in concentration. He slowly opened his eyes until they were wide open. There are too many. He thought, putting himself on guard. Unconsciously his hands began to accumulate energy, ready to be used. Erzin, enemies are surrounding us. He shouted, but received no response. Turning to look at him, she noticed that he was still in a trance. He could even see a mosquito standing on his forehead. Grrrgg. Before he could say anything, he heard a growl coming from the forest around them. At this he stopped concentrating on the boy and prepared for any attack. And as she suspected, from the trees a monster rushed towards her to attack her. It was a kind of mutated bear, with horns and spikes coming out of various parts of its body. The speed at which it was launched was undoubtedly too much for a normal person. Too bad Laura isn't one. Without wasting any time, he extended his fist towards the beast and a blast of energy shot out. This attack was powerful enough to completely erase half of the mutated bear's body. But he didn't have time to raise his guard again as two monsters came out from his sides, one had the shape of a lizard and the other was one with different tumors on its body. Laura extended her hands towards them and shot a large amount of energy at them. Enough to just let their legs stand there before they fall. After a few seconds, more monsters came out from around them. The woman only shot them mostly in the head to kill them quickly. This seemed easy at first, but little by little the number of monsters attacking them began to increase. It got to the point where one of the monsters managed to injure her arm. It was a rather deep cut with his claws. This made it more difficult for him to kill the monsters. Shit. They keep coming. Where the hell do these things come from? He mentally shouted while shooting all the monsters he could. Ddraig. Laura heard a roar above her. When she looked up she opened her eyes wide to see a monster with monkey features about to fall on her. He was so close that he wouldn't even have time to shoot him in the head. Just as the monster was about to knock Laura down, it suddenly exploded like a water balloon. But instead of splashing water, what Laura received in the face was blood and organs. The monsters that were close and about to come out suffered the same fate. In less than a second the whole place had become a carnage, blood, organs and decapitated or halved corpses. Laura, who had her eyes closed, wiped the blood from her eyelids with her hands. But that done, he opened them and slowly turned to where Erzin was. Who was standing in front of him, watching the whole massacre with indifference while scratching his cheek. His clothes also had some blood that had splashed on them. The woman looked at the boy with wide eyes before turning to ones filled with anger. "Oh why the hell did you do that?" She screamed loudly, while the brunette turned to look at her because of the scream. "Huh? That monster was going to fall on you," she replied simply, completely ignoring her companion's fury. Well yes. But did you have to make it explode?" Her screams weren't as loud anymore, but she was still very angry. He saw his clothes, and most of them were covered in blood and organ parts. "Well, I had to kill him," he shrugged, making Laura even angrier. Before the woman could continue shouting, they felt an even stronger tremor than the previous one. Laura left her anger for Erzin and became alert. "I could feel an enemy surrounding them. I didn't know why he would do that, but what I did know was that that threat was what caused those tremors." Again he began to emanate energy and accumulate it in his hands. Out of nowhere, a huge rock flew towards them. As soon as Laura saw it, she fired a burst of energy at the rock and destroyed it. The tremors became stronger and stronger, and they could also see trees being destroyed. The woman was too tense at this moment. What kind of monster is this? Its hostility is enormous. He thought as his eyes sharpened. Little by little the energy in his hands was increasing, it seemed that he should use more power than he thought. On the other hand, the chestnut was curious. He might feel watched, but he put that aside. An earthquake? He asked himself mentally. He didn't understand why everything was shaking so much, so the most logical thing came to his mind. Before I could think of anything else, the tremors suddenly stopped. Everything went silent, leaving both of them quite confused. When Laura was about to speak, everything in front of her was destroyed, creating a curtain of dust. Grrrghr. A loud growl was heard coming from the dust in the air. Little by little, the curtain dissipated, revealing parts of the monster. First came his arms. They were abnormally large and gray in color. His hands formed a fist and were placed on the ground. His torso was in combination with his gigantic arms. His legs and feet were also abnormally large, but not so much as to go with his upper body. And finally, his head was a face in the middle of his shoulders. It didn't seem to have a head to begin with, just wide eyes and a mouth full of fangs. He stuck out his green tongue as his saliva fell in streams. Once they both saw the monster, they had different reactions. "It's huge." it must be a category 9 or 10. She thought, alarmed and somewhat nervous. It felt the same as when he accompanied Erzin on his first mission. That time he saw a horde of category 8 Cajuns, he almost told Erzin to abandon that mission. Could I fight this monster? Yes, I could. But for her to make the huge island shake with just her footsteps, she wouldn't come out well. You could be on the verge of death. And Erzin, well, he was thinking of something more important. It seems this was a human before, he thought, seeing the monster's slightly torn pants. I could also see some sort of shirt remnant on the top of his pants. Upon closer inspection, he could tell it was a brand name thanks to a badge on the side of the pants. From what he could deduce, it was expensive. Then the clothes were seen with blood. What a waste, he thought, somewhat disappointed. Brand name clothing is usually more comfortable than regular clothing. In his room he had clothes, but none of them were brand name despite the money he had at his disposal. But back to what's important, the monster stared at them. Quickly, he set his sights on Laura, who could sense enormous hostility towards her. Without thinking, with a good part of his power and with both hands, he fired a large blast of violet energy towards the monster. He received it without problems, but ended up retreating a few meters. Laura did not stop her attack and instead increased the intensity. Drgagh. The monster growled and slowly began to advance through the attack. This continued until the attack split, causing more destruction in the area. Laura stopped her attack and saw with great surprise and nervousness the monster that, apart from emanating a little smoke, had no damage. What? That word was the only thing he could formulate. The beast began to advance, causing tremors from its strong footsteps and fists. The woman, gritting her teeth, began to gather more and more energy in her hands. It seemed like I would have to go all out. This monster is definitely a category 9, almost touching 10, he thought, preparing to attack. The monster was moving faster towards Laura, making the tremors stronger. Just as he was about to jump to attack, something distracted him. Ah. Shit, this is too sticky. Erzin shouted in annoyance and disgust. The problem with monster blood is that it is very difficult to remove from clothes when washing them. You had to scrub for a long time and use a lot of detergent. The brown-haired man could scrub it faster to get it out faster, but he would end up tearing his own clothes. And that would be a problem. He didn't know that the blood on his clothes was nothing compared to Laura's, which was soaked in monster blood. The monster seemed to get annoyed, as he didn't understand what the brown-haired man was saying. He thought he was provoking him. So he changed his target to Erzin, who didn't even notice the monster's presence. Or maybe he did, but decided to ignore it. The beast, without wasting time, rushed towards the chestnut tree with a powerful blow without restraint. Laura, seeing this, completely forgot the boy's abilities and decided to warn him. Careful. He shouted with all his might, hoping the brown-haired boy would dodge the blow. He lifted his head from his clothes to the gigantic fist that was inches away from him. The blow successfully connected with Erzin's body. The wave passed by, creating a trail of destruction that left nothing until the other side of the island. The curtain of dust created by the blow dissipated, revealing an Erzin that was not affected at all. The only notable thing that the blow had done to him was to bury his feet a little in the ground. Beyond that, it didn't even make him change his expression or pose. He was still clutching the part of his clothes with monster blood on it and was still somewhat hunched over. Laura saw this in absolute shock. The trail of destruction behind Erzin was vast, he could even see the sea through it. And yet, Erzin hadn't even moved a millimeter. What the buck? He said in a barely audible whisper. He didn't even have enough air to say anything properly. The monster, seeing this, using more and more strength, wanted to push Erzin to knock him down. However, all he did was bury his bare feet in the ground. Ddraig. Demonstrating that it was using all its strength, the beast let out a powerful roar, which made Laura have to cover her ears tightly to avoid becoming permanently deaf. At this, Erzin frowned slightly. I didn't understand what the monster wanted to do, it seemed like it was pretending to push me, since I couldn't feel any kind of pressure or push. The blow he received seemed to have not a single gram of force, or so he thought, since he did not notice what was behind him. Hey, he slowly raised his hand and made a fist with it. You're very annoying, shut your mouth. Right after saying that, he threw a punch. A simple, light punch, for him. For everything else, the force of that attack was totally devastating. But this, it caused 3 things. 1. The monster disappeared completely, left literally nothing of him. 2. The trail of destruction it made was even bigger than the previous one. And 3. The gust of air was not limited to the island, as the sea waters parted a great distance, creating very large waves that took a while to calm down. Basically, it turned half the island into practically a beach. The bad one, but there it was. Laura, who had witnessed everything, was left with a slight smile and empty eyes. He had been in a trance seconds after seeing what Erzin's blow had caused. She completely ignored the dust that covered her. The chestnut tree dug his feet out of the ground, went to another place to sit, take off his shoes, and remove the dirt that had gotten into them. He was bothered by the feeling of dirt or sand inside his shoes. After doing that and putting them back on, he approached Laura. "Hey," he said to get her attention, but the purple-haired girl was still in a trance. "Are you okay?" he asked her, seeing that she didn't respond. He didn't get an answer to that either, so he just sighed. I was going to tell him that the dust reached him, but since, he thought, raising his hand straight. Using it as a sort of fan, he generated a wind big enough to blow all the dust away from his body. But instead, it only raised more dust that ended up making Laura's clothes and face white. Oh damn, he said, a little worried seeing what he had done. So with no other option, he approached the woman and began to pat her body, cleaning the dust. "Yeah," he said, a little relieved that Laura hadn't noticed. Although his face was still covered in dust, he thought it would be a better idea to leave it like that. He would have to clean his face anyway because of the monster blood. It was about a minute before Laura came to. Realizing that what had happened was not her imagination, she tried to calm herself by taking a deep breath. He could see Erzin in front of the sea, kneeling while he seemed to do something. The purple-haired girl didn't want to get closer, despite having witnessed his strength once before. She wasn't that close when he passed by. That boy's power is out of this world. He's even starting to doubt if he's really human. Taking another sigh, he was finally able to calm down and think clearly. He recalled the conversation he had with him before the attack. Everything he had told her, he was sincere in every word he said. There was no deception or attempt at this. If I really wanted to, I would have done it already, she thought, as she started walking towards him. Erzin's strength could make anyone subdue, of that he had no doubt. And he also knew very well that anyone with this power would take advantage of it, and in whatever he wanted to do no one could stop him. But the boy in front of her didn't do that. He even behaves like an ordinary boy. As if he didn't have the power he has. No one in the group could stop him, and this scenario only confirmed it. And yet he behaves normally, with simple words and thoughts. Every step he took just made her feel weird. He knew he was approaching possibly the strongest person in the world. But his behavior, along with everything he had told her, made the fear she felt towards Erzin's power dissipate. Even when she yelled at him, he didn't even bother or think about yelling back. He just spoke to her normally. Although he could have silenced her, he didn't. If the power he had didn't corrupt him, what could? Already standing in front of the crouching Erzin, she realized that he was trying to clean the blood stains on his clothes. Since the stains were still fresh, they could come out more easily. It's a shame that instead of having that result, it was muddying the stains more. Damn. He shouted in frustration, before noticing Laura's presence. "Oh hi," he greeted her, returning to his usual expression. The woman blinked a little at this, but then shook her head. And he remembered that he had blood already dried on his face. Without saying anything, he just knelt down next to Erzin, and with the seawater he began to clean his face. Dried monster blood on the skin comes off much easier, even if it is already dry. The brown-haired boy saw her doing that and then looked at her clothes carefully. Then he saw the water below him. He felt a little guilty seeing his clothes like that, since his had taken the best part. So he scratched his head, somewhat embarrassed. "Hey, your clothes." The woman stopped pouring water on her face to look at the brown-haired man. "Huh?" She looked at her clothes and realized, they're really dirty. She had forgotten why she was angry with Erzin. But now I didn't even have the desire to do that. There were many emotions in a few minutes. "Yes, and well, I could wash it for you," he said in his normal tone, confusing the woman. "Wash it?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, I made you get soaked, so I guess I could make up for it." Although his expression was normal, his tone of voice was somewhat uncomfortable. "I've never done or said anything like this." He felt ashamed. He didn't like that feeling. Laura saw something strange about him. And where did that goodwill come from? That was the question that now plagued her. Yes, it was true that it was his fault, but I didn't expect him to be willing to admit it, let alone make amends. In a way he found that nice, but… He looked down at the muddy stains on the boy's clothes and hesitated for a moment. You'll most likely only need detergent to wash it well. Furthermore, he wants to correct his mistake. Why not give it a try? Okay, I'll give you the clothes when we get to the mansion, he said calmly. Seriously, this guy was a very strange kind of person. After a few seconds, they both returned to their initial position. Both on the sides of the entrance. They remained silent, but unlike before, it was no longer awkward. They only saw the improvised beach. They would have continued like that if Laura's intercom hadn't started ringing. She brought a finger to press it and listened better. "Laura, what's the situation up there?" Christina's voice was heard, which was a little agitated. Well, apparently, for a moment a huge horde of monsters came out of nowhere to attack us. But we'll take care of that. Laura's voice sounded a little dazed. I didn't expect them to call her. Okay, then we need you to come, there are a lot of monsters here. Her voice was a little dazed. This suddenly alarmed Laura. Seriously, I would need a good rest after this. He looked up at the sky and sighed to calm himself. Then let's go. Oh no. The brown-haired boy looked up, which caused his companion to interrupt his words. I think we need to deal with one more problem here, he said as his stress returned. What's the problem? The woman and the teenager saw how a lot of magic circles appeared in the sky, while from these many fallen angels came out of them. It seems the crows are always nosy. Laura spoke through the intercom. This would be more annoying than I expected. Meanwhile, Erzin just cleaned his ear in boredom. Chapter 19. In the subway. Things had gotten out of hand for the quartet, who were doing everything they could to keep the situation under control. The amount of monsters that came out was too much, and the small space didn't help. They had to coordinate and control their attacks well if they didn't want everything to fall apart. And as they just found out about the situation up there, the situation became more frustrating. Seriously, can't you think of a better time to come and screw up our existence? That scream came from Shunto, who was slicing at the monsters that came at him with his swords. I've said it before and I'll say it again, those crows are the worst. The blonde said while controlling her dagger in the air, piercing the heads of the approaching monsters. And those who escaped, he beat to death. He had superhuman strength and a good level in combat. Also, the monsters she killed weren't that strong. Christina just threw bursts of magic power at the monsters' heads. He said nothing to what his colleagues mentioned. After seeing in that recording what the Fallen did to the superhuman children, he began to feel some contempt and rejection towards them. And the fact that they are now causing problems only makes that feeling grow more and more. We just have to wait for them to finish quickly and come support us, Lux said more calmly. But inside he was very angry at the appearance of the fallen angels. I already hated them like crazy, and the recording only made things worse. Now they came to give them more problems, this was the last straw. For a moment he wished he was up there so he could kill them so they would stop bothering him. But unfortunately he was trapped with his companions, being surrounded by a bunch of monsters. This fact made his mood worsen even more, so with a good bolt of electricity, he pierced the heads of an entire row of monsters. Under normal circumstances, this kind of monsters would not be a problem for them. But now quantity was a big problem, and the small space they had made things even more difficult. He was starting to get more and more stressed, to the point that he drained the anger he was accumulating with the monsters. They couldn't use the stairs either, since monsters also came down from there. Little by little the place was becoming narrower due to the corpses of the same monsters that did not allow the group to move as before. They couldn't move them either because the monsters didn't give them time to do so. Sooner or later they will end up trapped among monster corpses or they will end up getting tired. Either way, it wouldn't be nice for them. A few more seconds passed and the white-haired girl reached the limits of her patience. They already had to solve the fallen issue without having to deal with low-level monsters. For a few seconds he stopped attacking and accumulated energy throughout his body. Down. With that shout he made his entire group put their chests on the ground. All the monsters that came out quickly approached them with the sole purpose of killing them. But they weren't fast enough to prevent what the woman had planned. With strength and speed he extended his hands to the sides and a lot of spears of light were shot in the entire area. Those spears of light pierced everything within their reach except where their companions were. The most affected were the monsters, which pierced entire rows of a good number of them. Even the corpses that had been left behind were pierced by these. Seconds after that, everything that was hit by the spears began to disintegrate. The monsters, the corpses, even some parts of the walls began to disappear, as if they were being consumed by a very intense fire. At that moment, Christina fainted due to the loss of energy and magical power. She would have fallen face down on the ground if Lux hadn't caught her in time. The three of them looked somewhat amazed at what he did. He could have made more space for them to fight better. The problem with that was that one of them ended up falling. He didn't die, did he? She raised her voice somewhat worried while breathing tiredly. No, you just need to rest. Lux was also breathing a little heavily because of all this. And at the same time he was very annoyed by the fact that his partner had to use such an exhausting movement to give them a break. We must protect her at all costs, the brown-haired man spoke and the other two nodded. The group surrounded Christina's body so that no monster could reach her. Fortunately, with that movement the woman had made it take the monsters a little time to reach them, which they took advantage of to take in all the air they could. Once you see that the beasts were closer to them, Lux's arms began to surround themselves with very intense green rays. And just as he was about to launch an attack, a burst of violet energy disintegrated the approaching monsters. Everyone recognized the attack, so they quickly turned to the owner of it. "I really had a bad time," said Laura when she saw a fainted Christina and missing parts of the place. And the fact that a bunch of monsters were coming out of nowhere, along with how tired they looked, only confirmed his words. Behind her was a trail of blood, organs and monster parts scattered. Definitely a horrible scene. "You saved us, we are grateful." Shunto joked with a happy smile. He was getting fed up with the monsters that seemed endless. The purple-haired girl rolled her eyes at that. "And it seems you didn't do any better," the blonde spoke to her friend, seeing her clothes and part of her hair covered in blood. "You could say," he said, noticing while Liz concluded. "Having a monster explode in your face and everything inside it stick to you was not a pleasant experience. Well, at least you could save yourself from having to wash your stained clothes." "Where is Urzin?" Lux asked, seeing that he wasn't with her. "He stayed to deal with the ugly pigeons," he said simply. After the brown-haired man showed his strength to his face again, he had no doubt that he alone could take care of creatures like the fallen angels. If you compare them in power, of course. The group began to hear different roars of monsters approaching. "We must get out of here now." Lux raised his voice in alarm. He quickly picked up Christina and held her tight. Everyone nodded and quickly went up the stairs. After a few seconds and Shunto slipping on the blood on the stairs, they were able to climb into the large shed through which they passed. Their good number of monsters were waiting for them, and they rushed towards them. Having already taken a breather and with much more space, this part was like a walk in the park. No one had any problem passing through the shed while protecting Lux, who was carrying Christina. It wasn't long before everyone was finally outside. And the first thing they saw was not only that the island was missing a huge piece. But all around, you could see a lot of fallen angels defeated on the ground. Some with swollen faces, others with shattered armor, others with half their bodies buried in the ground, floating in the water, and so on. Everyone except Laura was puzzled until the teenager of the group entered their vision. The most striking thing about him now was that one arm and part of the top of his jacket were missing. And on top of that, the chestnut tree looked annoyed at the fallen who, well, they fell. "I don't know what kind of perverts you are to want to undress me, but don't do it anymore." His tone of voice contained quite a bit of annoyance. "Maybe you could learn how to replace parts of your broken clothes so you don't have to spend more money on that. At this rate all the money I earn will go towards replacing entire outfits." Just because his opponents liked to destroy the one he had on. It was when he turned to look at the others that his gaze returned to what it normally was. "Oh hello," he greeted them simply. "Hey, you took care of them." Shunto seemed excited to see the scene. He was already quite upset with the fallen angels for not helping them with the monsters earlier. "And I didn't really like them that much, let's say." The others, although they didn't say it, were the same as Shunto. "What happened to her?" he approached and asked, pointing at Christina and Lux's arms. "He's quite exhausted, he just needs to rest," replied the older brown-haired man, seeing his girlfriend like that. "Tell me, what happened to these fallen ones?" The chestnut tree began to remember what happened when they appeared. Minutes before. The bunch of fallen angels had appeared above Urzin and Laura by means of magic circles. They all carry weapons and armor, ready for combat if necessary. When everyone had passed, the circles disappeared, revealing a small army of fallen angels. They had varied expressions when they saw the place. "Is this really where it is?" asked a soldier, looking at his general. "Apparently yes, the signal of invasion to one of our facilities comes from here," he said, somewhat confused, but without losing his serious expression. "The place looks abandoned, maybe some rat accidentally reactivated the system or something." "Sir, we should go report this to Mr. Azazel," another soldier spoke up, saying this last while looking at his leader. "Yeah, look at the rats that did it," one of his companions said, pointing to where Urzin and Laura were. It caught everyone's attention and they turned to where it was pointing. Immediately everyone's eyes fell on Laura. They gave a mocking smile, others of interest and some of you know. The purple-haired girl, upon noticing this, could only frown. I had had enough and now the crows were coming. In addition, they had to go help their classmates, who must not be having a good time. Out of the corner of his eye he saw the brown-haired man, who was watching the exercise of fallen angels with total indifference and boredom. Normally, I'd be wondering what the hell was going through his mind. But from what I had seen of him, I really found it logical that he was like that. In fact, I believed that comparing or even wondering if Urzin would be okay with him would be an insult to Urzin himself. Taking this into account, he made a decision. "Hey, Urzin," she called him, making him turn to look at her. "What?" "Christina called me and they're in trouble, so I'm going to help them. Can you take care of them?" she asked, pointing to the exercise. The brown-haired boy turned to the army, who continued to look at the purple-haired girl in different ways. This scene reminded him of when he was chased in the underworld by an army of demons. The demons back then were too weak. If he wanted to kill them, a single blow would have been enough. And if this time it was the same, then I would have no problem at all. "Well," he answered simply. The woman was already starting to get used to his attitude, so she just nodded and started walking towards the building. Ooh, is he leaving already? One spoke with feigned discouragement. Well, he got into one of our facilities. Abandoned or not, he'll still have to come with us, his companion said, still smiling at Laura's figure walking towards the entrance. And I completely agree with that. We could make her meet some requirements to set her free, don't you think? At that, many nodded with malicious laughter. Heh. She can stay as far as I'm concerned. Always taking care of the faction is very stressful at this point, so a little fun wouldn't hurt, one of them said with a smile while analyzing the purple-haired girl's body. She wasn't as voluptuous as many of her fallen companions, but she was certainly very attractive. The soldiers continued to mutter things, all agreeing to take Laura with them. Usually, when there was some high-ranking fallen angel, they didn't behave like that. Whether for jobs given personally by the leader of their faction or to act as guards in case there were meetings between more factions. But this task was not given by the leader, and neither will his guards be. They only responded to the warning sign that was in one of their facilities. So on occasions like this, they could be as irreverent as they wanted. The purple-haired girl just walked while listening to what they were saying about her. They didn't even have the luxury of saying it in a low voice. He clicked his tongue in annoyance. It wouldn't be the first time you've heard things like that. In a way, I was used to that kind of comments. But they still seemed annoying to him. He continued like this until some words entered his ears. Hey, look who's over there. A soldier stopped talking about the woman and focused on the teenager who was still standing in his place. Everyone hearing that did the same and was amazed. Isn't that Ghidorah? Asked one, surprised to see him. Is it really him? He asked with a raised eyebrow. It can't be, I thought his appearance was a joke, but it's really him. Another raised his voice. At first glance he doesn't seem like much. Just a normal human boy. For being the brother of the Sekiryuutei he looks pathetic. The general was incredulous at the sight of the world's greatest terrorist, or so they called him. He never thought he would find it in a place like this. While his soldiers were talking, he just remained silent, analyzing the situation. He had direct orders from his leader that if he saw the boy, he was to bring him to him at all costs. And seeing how he looks, he could do it without any problems. Or so I thought. Laura, who had slowed her steps, heard everything. As he entered the building, he could only give an amused smile. Poor fools, he thought, as he passed the entrance. I almost felt sorry for those unfortunate bastards for not watching their filthy mouths. He would have liked to stay and watch his partner beat the hell out of them, but he had a priority now. So without further ado, he started running. The chestnut tree only looked at the newcomers, still bored. Even though he already had the result, he was somewhat curious to know a little about his abilities. He had only fought one during his stay in the underworld. But that was a fighter too weak and without joke, instead these were soldiers. They should be stronger then, he thought, while remembering how he killed that fallen angel. If they weren't, then I would be very disappointed. Ghidorah. The general spoke, silencing his soldiers. That last name again. He didn't like being called that. It made him uncomfortable. The fallen general descended little by little until he touched the ground and stood in front of the chestnut tree. The other fallen followed him, but instead of touching the ground, they remained suspended in the air a few meters from it. The brunette tilted his head, waiting to see what would happen. The soldiers, meanwhile, couldn't help but mutter things. Seriously, it looks very ordinary. I can't believe everyone is on alert for someone like that. And even if it were strong, I don't think it would be that bad. What he said caught everyone's attention. What do you mean? Just think. All he did was destroy places and monuments, nothing out of the ordinary for us, he said very calmly. You knew he attacked several demon houses, right? Yes, but as of yet, it's unknown how he did it, and I suspect the pretty woman from a moment ago may have had something to do with it. It's likely she did it, and this brat has a minor role. And the monuments? No one else was seen destroying them. Everyone was in doubt now. However, when it came to humans, the scales always leaned to the same side. Like I said, even if it were real, it's nothing we can't do ourselves, he said this with confidence and a smile. And the balance tipped towards believing what they always believed. The army general was no exception in this. He, like much of his species, did not like humans. He always considered them weak compared to them. He even found it funny how they didn't realize that the world was more than what they could see. Sure, they are responsible for that, but it was still fun. However, when humans started developing superhuman abilities, things got a little problematic. Even if humanity was not yet aware of them, they knew that at any moment they could do so. But despite that, the other races continued to make them less. When a superhuman discovered them, instead of erasing their memory as they normally would, they killed them. That gives them more confidence in something. Humans will never catch up with us, that was the collective thought they had. It didn't matter if some hated humans or not, they had the belief that on their own, humanity would not be their equal. It is and always was like this. So what difference would there be now? The boy may be strong, but even Azazel himself has admitted that he was wrong. What guarantee was there that this was not the case now? Making his choice, he gripped his spear more tightly. In the name of the alliance of the biblical faction and other mythologies, you will be arrested. His tone of voice implied that whatever he does, he would retaliate. His soldiers, hearing that, smiled smugly. If they managed to catch him and take him to their leader, they would be well paid. Then there is the factor of the woman who left a few moments ago. Just imagining all of that together, some couldn't help but drool. Surrender now, or assume the consequences of your actions right now. With that last thing said, he crashed the bottom of his weapon into the ground, causing a small rumble in the area. His level of strength was quite something, not for nothing was he a general in command of the army of the fallen angels. If he had known the boy was there, he would have arrived with a larger team of soldiers, just to further ensure his victory. As if it were a choreography, the soldiers also stood on guard with perfect synchrony. The chestnut tree saw this with some astonishment. According to him, they had prepared quite a bit. But why rehearse something like that? It wasn't necessary. With that thought, the boy returned to his usual stoic face. The general was confused. The boy was supposed to have had more of a reaction to this, after all he was facing an army. And although it was small by their standards, it was actually a fairly high number of casualties. So why wasn't he bullied? Of course, Erzin's astonishment was so tiny that no one noticed. Was he making fun of them? That possibility flashed through his mind. However, he stayed with that since it seemed the most logical thing to do. And that bothered him a lot. His pride did not allow him to accept that a miserable human being could make fun of him. Little by little he began to cover his spear with light. No was the only thing that came out of the chestnut tree's mouth. That was more than enough reason for his next action. Attack. With that loud shout, he ended up coating his spear with light. The soldiers' reaction was not long in coming, as the moment their general gave the order, they obeyed it. All forming a spear of light each, they began to attack in different ways. Whether throwing the spears or going straight to cut it. However, the chestnut tree only dedicated itself to dodging any attack for 2 reasons. 1, because I wanted to measure the strength and speed of these fallen angels. And the second, even though those spears of light wouldn't do anything to him, his clothes wouldn't have the same luck. I was already annoyed that it got dirty and that it made it even more dirty. But back to the first thing, not even a second had passed and disappointment took hold of him. Not only were the attacks lacking in power, the speed was also very pitiful according to him. That's why the attacks were nowhere near hitting the target. He did all this with a face that looked like he wanted to fall asleep. Meanwhile, the fallen angels seemed very surprised and stunned. Altogether they spent their time attacking the chestnut tree, which was somehow predicting their attacks. And he did it as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Immediately their surprise changed to anger and they started going with everything they had. The strength and speed of his attacks had increased considerably because of that. But for the chestnut tree, there was no difference since he still dodged everything. The general was the most surprised of all those there. But the thought he had, even if he put up resistance he shouldn't be able to do anything, and even less so if it's against an army. Little by little he was forming a fist with his free hand, he considered it unheard of that a simple human put them in this situation. He could see his soldiers going with everything they had, but there was no positive result. Anger soon took over his being and for a moment eliminated all traces of self-control. Murity. With just the thought of killing the arrogant brat, he raised his spear imbued with his power and threw it towards the boy. Due to his boredom with those attacking him, he didn't notice the spear coming towards him quickly. It was when he turned to dodge an attack that he noticed the spear, but by then the attack had already hit him. An explosion occurred at that moment, in which even some soldiers were victims of it. A smokescreen covered most of the island, blinding everyone present completely. Cough. Cough. What happened? I don't know. It just exploded. I can't see anything. These and more comments were heard around the place. Because no one had vision, they didn't know who was speaking. Even the general seemed somewhat stunned. He had regained his composure and realized what he had done. The confusion turned to nervousness at that moment. The order from their leader was to take him alive. What would you do if you found out he killed the boy? He didn't want to imagine the punishment he would receive. Using his magic power, he cleared the smoke around him, hoping to only see the unconscious brown-haired boy. Little by little everything became clearer for him and everyone else, who felt a little relieved by this. But that relief turned to terror as he suddenly felt an aura of death. When Erzin's location became clearer, they asked to see him with part of his upper clothing destroyed. His jacket was missing an arm at the top of it. He didn't seem to have any scratches or any indication that the attack had done anything to him. His face was completely covered by a shadow while he clenched his fists, which made some veins stand out. His muscles, now exposed, looked very tense, and some veins also stood out. This, along with the aura of death he gave off, made him look like a monster. The pressure and murderous instinct that didn't let the fallen angels breathe well. In fact, they couldn't move a finger. Not even the leaders of their own faction had made them feel as terrified as they do now. The general was not in a better situation. In all his centuries no one had ever made him feel as afraid as he did now. Even if he tried to hide it under a serious face, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He slowly lowered his gaze to the chestnut tree's feet, and next to them his spear was already split in two. How it's not possible, that was the general's thought, who was internally shitting himself with fear. That had been a killing attack, and while it wasn't all he had, the potency and power he had was no joke. But the boy in front of him had no sign of any harm. Before I could think of anything, the boy had disappeared. The next thing he saw was each and every one of his soldiers falling and flying away one by one, as if an invisible force was hitting them. He didn't have time to react to this, because suddenly a fist appeared in his vision. That fist hit his face, and he was sent flying off the island until he was lost from sight. End of memory. Now I have to change my clothes, said the brown-haired boy, seeing the one that didn't fit. Every time he met someone, his clothes were the only casualty. And he was starting to get annoyed. Well, at least they won't bother us. Lux's attitude improved a little upon seeing the scene in front of her. Maybe after this your confidence towards the chestnut will increase a little more. Liz, without waiting any longer, wrapped her arm around Erzin's neck, making his face stick to her chest. Yes, I'll take care of rewarding him, he said with a somewhat tired smile. His attitude was noticeably different due to what he had seen and experienced moments before. He didn't even feel like hitting on the brown-haired guy anymore. Erzin just kept his face blank despite the approach. Shunto, what's that? Laura asked the blue-haired boy, pointing at the dirty stuffed animal tied to his belt. Huh? He saw the stuffed animal. Well, I'll tell you later. His mood dropped considerably, although he tried to hide it. His partner noticed this, but just nodded. Something was wrong. Brogger. Brogger. Different roars were heard from inside the building, which were getting closer. After that, silhouettes of monsters were seen, approaching alarmingly fast. Everyone except Erzin tensed at that. They had had more than enough with the experience from a while ago. They were very stressed now. The brown-haired man, seeing this without saying anything, clenched a fist and took a few steps forward. Realizing this, Liz became alarmed. Erzin, what the hell? He couldn't finish as he saw how the boy only threw a simple punch. At that instant, half of the building in front of him had disappeared, along with another part of the island. Following that, he turned around and saw everyone with their mouths to the ground. That's it, he said casually. Those present were still stupefied by what they had seen. They knew of his strength, but witnessing it like that was something else. The only one who was not at ease was Laura, who was already somewhat experienced in this matter. If they're done drowning, we should go. Of course, if they don't want any more meddling fall in here, said Laura, snapping her friends out of their trance. Oh sure, Liz said in a somewhat broken tone. Shunto gulped at such a display of power in his face. And Lux did his best to calm down, besides fixing his gaze on his girlfriend who was still in his arms. Without further ado, they all returned to the big ship and boarded it. Since Christina was the only one who could remove the illusion that kept the ship from being seen, it was somewhat complicated for them to find its entrance. Once they did, without giving them time to wait, they set off back to their island. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.